We're live as a motherfucker. Unfiltered Reptiles Podcast. Peep the t-shirts. What's going on, everybody? Happy New Year. I'm your boy MJ. Welcome to Unfiltered Reptiles Podcast. First podcast of the new year. We're pretty stoked. Before we get started, please don't forget to like, share, more importantly, subscribe to our new channel that we had up and going. Spread the word. Let people know that this is the coolest fucking reptile podcast around right now. Hands down. Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, Brian BARCZYK has a new podcast out. Has nothing to do with reptiles, but it's checking in. So other than that, guys, before we get started, just want to go ahead and let you guys know Southeast CARPETFEST is on its way. It's going to be held February 8th at the Terrestrial and Arboreals facility in Melrose, Florida, hosted by Pia and Cody Bartolini. You know, we all know who that is. Forrest is good homie. But more importantly, guys, there's going to be a link in the description below as far as your donations. They have over 200 donations so far. All proceeds are split between, damn, I don't even know what the hell this means, but it goes to a really good cause. Nido virus and all that good shit. All that research is going to be, all the money is going to be donated to that. So very important, very crucial. Ian Bessel is a man to talk to if you have any questions or concerns. Sorry, Ian, I didn't get a fucking sweatshirt this year. I'm going to get one soon, though, so best believe it. We're going to go ahead and bring in the homies real quick. Damn it. Well, there he is. Fuck it. You know, I didn't mean to do that, but I'm new at using this this platform. The homies, Forrest.
What's up, man?
Stephen Cushington.
What's up?
And then our guest, the fucking young OG, the prodigy, triple, Andrew Acevedo. Man, my boy, he's on. Honestly, this could say you're one of my closest friends I've had brought onto the show, and it's going to be a good one. Forrest, I know you're stoked. Steven, I know you're stoked.
We got I'm super stoked to be here, actually, dude.
Yeah, a young veteran, dude.
When you guys told me that this was even going to happen, like not me being a guest, just the fact that you guys were doing this as a whole, just making a podcast between you two, because Michael just has all these ideas that he wants to do. So it's like, it's hearing them is one thing, and actually seeing it come to life in just such a short period of time, and just seeing the guests that you guys have had is just it's been really cool. And the fact that you guys thought of me as one of the very few guests to be here is an honor in a way.
Yeah, man. Me and Forrest kind of in the beginning of all this, one thing I got Forrest pumped up about was like the people I had in mind about bringing in on the show. And, you were one of those people that we brought in, that we thought about. So this is something we were fucking prepped for a while. We're glad that you're actually on it now.
Oh, yeah, dude. I'm super excited.
Because like I said before, I said when I just came out with the new YouTube episode, and I said the only reason why I stumbled onto Forrest's page was because you fucking put me on game about Forrest. Like, you literally told me, like, do you want to see the nicest collection in the United States? I said, yeah. And he fucking sent me, I don't know what it was, but it was something so like it was a whole addiction into
I remember that whole trip was the first Tinley I ever went on. Yep. And it was we drove from New Jersey to Illinois, and that was a 16-hour drive in a tiny car. It was me, Mikey Broggs, Craig, and Craig's brother. And we were shoved in the back of his car for just nonstop driving through all different types of weather. And he was like, we're going to stop by Forrest Fanning's. At the time, I had no idea who Forrest was. All I knew is that he bred rodents and that he had animals. And that kind of sounds like almost every other reptile keeper, but it was far that I really realized like the scale that it was going to be at. And just seeing a rodent facility to that level, it was insane. It was like, I've seen a lot of rats, but that was definitely the most rats I've ever seen in my entire life. But, just being able to see a collection, like that, and having those two hand in hand, because usually you can't do one or the other. It's either strictly one or the other. Trying to do both, you have to commit every ounce of time that you truly have to even make it even possible. And then let alone to make it a career, like to something to where you're making a living out of it. So, because it's not so, it's like to where you're trying to, because at the end of the day, you're a rodent producer for almost half the country, and I mean that's at the end of the day that is your main focus. Every year is producing more and more quality rodents, and at this point you're just also a pet keeper that happens to have animals that you intend on breeding, but if not, okay, if they do, great,
That's how I had to start thinking about it. I want to have them, and then
Exactly, because what would you either be doing? You'd either be you could have used that space to what, breed ball pythons, or you know what I mean, or even focus on boas and no. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but at that point, it's just like, why would you if that's not what you enjoy keeping? Especially when you're investing that much time and that much money, and it's like you're not just keeping snakes in your spare bedroom. You're literally dedicating your entire life revolved around it. And I look at it like, if you're going to invest that time, you better be at least enjoying it, because you don't get that time back, you know.
Yeah,
that's
all in. It's
all in. Yeah,
that was a heck of a trip, man. Just getting to meet you, and you know, you're the kind of guy where you're always, you know, you're going to come in and you're kind of pointing out things that are set up wrong and tell me how stupid my monitor husbandry is, and that's a real homie right there. When Cody comes over, like, I mean, it ends up in a blowout. It's a blowout every time. Like, it's almost a fight. Like, because Cody's just like talking so much shit about all wrong with my setup, and then he leaves, and I'm like, all right, he's totally right. You know, I got to fix this and this and this. Because Cody's, if you guys ever see Cody's place, it's like I think it's the nicest, most professional setup in the U.S. Like, it's just. I
mean, I don't know Cody personally, but I see what he does, and it's definitely something that anyone should look up to. It's absolutely pristine and just. Perfect. And I love working with hots. I mean, unfortunately in New Jersey we can't keep them, so I am fortunate enough to have friends that let me keep them at their place where it is legal. So it's like I'm 45 minutes from Pennsylvania, so if I get the itch to want to go see my snakes, I get to go see it. But other than that, it's Cody alone is just a whole different type of keeper. You know, I think, like, you look at yourself as a keeper and you look at how Cody does it, and it doesn't matter if you're doing it as a hobby or a professional standpoint. It's just like, wow, like, it makes you just look at things twice, in my opinion. And there's very few people that I've seen, let alone know, that are doing it to that level, in my opinion. Just
if you're not trying to have it at that level, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You don't have to. It's just like, I'm lucky that he was a person that kind of taught me everything I know, and it's like a high standard to try to be at. And it's like, I want to get there with my stuff. And so it's like, and get out of that mentality of I want more. And it's like, well, I just want to make everything I have look as professional as possible and the best lives that, you know, I can give them. So it's cool thinking about it like that versus, you know, trying to squeeze more projects and more stuff into the room, you know?
For sure. I mean, like, when I came over there, I mean, it was just like, you were just so monitor crazy. You were, no, I can't say that. You were definitely big into all the arboreal stuff. And I mean, you still are, but at that point I remember you posting everything on Instagram, just seeing all these different tree boas every different week. And I was like, dude, what the hell? Like, I wish, you know. And then little did I know, like, that was a time where I was just really starting to get into it. That was like 2 years ago. I'm so new to just keeping arboreal stuff, and it's definitely in the past 2.5 years has changed my perspective on how I just keep everything. You know, it's not just snakes, you know, it's just like, just how I look at my small lizards and anything like that. It just gives you a whole different mindset on just being patient, because I'm sure you guys know, you know, keeping arboreal animals will definitely test your patience, and if you rush them, you will pay. And trust me, I mean, whether if you're paying it financially or emotionally, you're going to pay.
The longer and longer you keep those, the more heartless you become.
For sure.
You become jaded for damn sure.
After a while, and it just turns off. Like, when I lost little Chapo, it just, like, normally a year ago I would have fucking probably like had an emotional breakdown.
Telling me I'm ready to get rid of everything, you know.
Moving, man. It is what it is. You got to expect. You know, it was almost kind of too good to be true that he made it that far. So it's kind of like, what the fuck do you expect? You know, it's not my only year going. So, but I feel you, bro. I think you helped me out a lot with that too. You kind of braced me for a lot of shit that hadn't happened and eventually did come up and happen. There's too many things to even think of, but you definitely gave me a dose of reality of like, look, you're gonna keep all these different species, and fucking eventually shit is gonna go down. No matter,
keeping anything imported, wild caught, and especially if you're so new, even if you know what you're doing, like, it's one of those things that you are taking an animal from God knows where, you know, halfway across the world, and you are putting it in a controlled setting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And there's different dynamic pressures, there's different humidities. All those things may not seem like a big deal to us as a human being, but as an animal that literally is dependent of its environment to survive,
right?
That whole change can mean the difference between life or death.
Yep.
And I think we're putting emotion attached to animals. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But in the sense where when you're keeping animals like that are being imported and taken from their native land to a captive setting, you have to just expect it at that point. It's just thinking that everything is going to go right is just impossible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not realistic at all. Definitely. So I guess for everybody out there who doesn't know who you are, when did you get into this? Tell us a little bit about your background and
for
how
sure.
you got where you are today.
Okay, so I can definitely say I've been keeping animals just animals in general throughout my entire life. Like there's pictures like that my mom has of me probably like when I was like 2 or 3 years old with green iguanas. That we had a pair of green iguanas that I used to let out, and they would just roam around the house. MJ, are we good?
Yeah, we can hear you. My bad.
We're good. Yeah, no, and just keeping animals at just such a young age, but definitely till I would say early elementary school, I started keeping random different lizard species, a lot of African fat tails, curly tail lizards, just imported stuff. And it was just one of those things that really kind of found my niche to where I was like, I enjoyed having all these random things, but at that point it was never the sense of breeding. And as I got older, probably to where I was like maybe 13 or 14, like the idea of wanting to keep and breed snakes was a very real idea that I had in mind. I had seen like Brian BARCZYK's videos. Like that's when I think snake bites was at such a different pace where it is than it is now. You know what I mean? Like they had just so much going on, and I remember being so young and just being like, holy cow, that looks amazing. Like I would love to have a snake set up like that. And I knew nothing, really about Facebook, the internet, Instagram, none of that. It was all just the fact that I had books and just my own general interest, and the few times that I could get my dad to drive me 2 hours away to to the Hamburg Reptile Show every once in a blue moon, So it was like, other than that, it was just the idea of keeping animals was just an interest of mine, and I had them for as long as I can remember. But yeah, definitely wasn't until probably, like I said, 13 or 14 where I started saving up money from like birthday or any ways that I could to just get stuff. And I always had an enjoyment around big snakes. Like that was just the idea. I was like, I love the idea of keeping big snakes. And I started off with Burmese pythons, and that was the first snake species I've ever bred. That was the first snake species, like I can honestly say, like I fell in love with keeping. Yeah. And, I will always have that, even though I don't even keep Burms. Actually, that's not true. But to a breeding standpoint, keeping Burms, I'm getting lost in my thought right here. I started off keeping Burms, and that was something that I really fell in love with and became passionate about. And within the 2 years of keeping them, I bought adults, started off babies, and then just started picking up whatever I can. I actually had a close friend of mine, my buddy Michael, and growing up, my mom hated snakes. So wanting to keep an animal that my mom didn't even allow in the house, it's kind of hard to have a passion for something and not even being able to do it. So I remember sneaking animals into the house all the time and just end up having to get rid of them. But it would usually be like just garter snakes or anything that I could find outside. But as I got older, I'd find ways, be like, I knew how to talk on the phone, and I knew how to send emails and get in contact, especially as I slowly got older and realized that the internet was a real thing, figuring out that you can just get animals. And if you have the money, most of the time, these people will sell them to you if you know what you're talking about. And I remember, putting on a grown-up voice and trying to get to, finding ways to get animals, and it worked. But anyways, going back to keeping the Burms, one of my close friends growing up, he loved snakes as well, and we were just close friends regardless. Like we weren't. I remember being in class and we became friends because I asked him. I was like, "Hey, do you like reptiles?" That was the first conversation you can ask him till this day. In like second grade, I asked him. I was like, "Hey, do you like reptiles?" And that was their first conversation they ever had. And still to this day, we're very close friends. But he always knew like just how much I enjoyed them, and that's, like I said, how we initially became friends. And he had a ball python growing up, and I remember I used to go over to his house, and we were, like I said, being in elementary school, seeing just this little ball python was the coolest thing. And I remember going to different pet shops with my dad, and just that was the one snake. It's funny because like I give crap on ball python. Like I I talk a decent amount of shit when it comes to the ball pythons. That at the end of the day, I think ball pythons are super cool, and that's like initially where I started. Like the idea
of ball pythons other than ball python people.
Yeah. But anyways, my friend was nice enough to let me keep stuff at his place. This is like where we started, and we were just so young, just doing stuff through Craigslist. And just keeping Burmese pythons and just wanting to breed them and just having just horrible luck and just not really knowing what we were doing. We were just a bunch of teenagers that had no idea and had these snakes that we probably shouldn't have had. And like I said, in retrospect, I mean, would you guys sell a Burmese python to a 13, 14-year-old kid? I personally wouldn't.
I mean, nowadays,
my first snake too, and it was around the same time frame.
Yeah, like being able to just act like I was older and being able to talk well enough that people believed what I was saying. And
you met up with this person, and you're like just by yourself, no adult, and you.
I would find some way to get. And this is like before Uber and all that stuff. It's like so easy to get around nowadays.
Do you have like a time frame of what year you were doing? This
is
kind of illegal
like 2010-ish, 2011. Was I mean, I just turned 23 this
2010.
Yeah, no, this is dude, I don't even remember, to be honest with you. It feels like so forever ago, but anyways, that's where it really initially started. And as I got older, I just kept pushing harder and harder that I wanted to keep these snakes, and my mom eventually just gave in. She was just like, okay, you know what, you can keep these things. Like, I guess it makes you that happy because you're willing to go spend every single weekend at your friend's house. You know what I mean? And that's the only thing you guys talk about. That's the only thing you guys spend your money on. So I guess if it really makes you that happy, she's like, I'll let you keep 2 snakes, and 2 snakes.
At least she went from nothing to 2 snakes,
Oh yeah, no, it was a huge step. And then she slowly overcame that fear. She was like, oh, she still to this day, like, she doesn't like the bigger ones, but I mean, like, she definitely doesn't mind them. She used to. You're talking about a person that used to never be even to like be around a snake to where it's like she'll even touch one. So it's definitely it's crazy to see that. Like, it took years to get to that point, but to change someone's perspective of, because my mom is from Honduras. Like, my mom was born over there. Like, they're taught to kill snakes. Like, you see a snake on the road, you drive faster. You know what I mean? Like, and when I hear that mentality when I go over there, it's just like, I'm like, that's so crazy to think that people want to hurt something that has been living there probably long before they were even a thought. It's just like, that's just part of what their surrounding is. And I think anyone that is around an environment like that, where you're just taught to just fear and hate and to kill things without even ever giving it a reason why, it doesn't really help. You're literally creating just a population around people that just fear and hate something. So how does that affect the environment? You know what I mean? Like, you talk to everyone in these countries, most of them will tell you, we kill them. You know what I mean? We don't even think twice about it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of people here like that too. Like, snake's a dead snake and all this stuff. But yeah, in Honduras, I mean, some of the stuff there, so many endangered,
it's crazy, dude,
cool reptiles.
It's a place like no else. I mean, I think being able to just see different snakes. I got to go to Cayos Cochinos, where they have the pink boa, the boa rosada. I mean, it's just pretty much a different hog island type of boa that's found only on that island. It's this very small island called Cayos Cochinos. I mean, it's such a cool little place. It's there's different spiny tail iguana, Roatan spiny tail iguanas that I know that are critically endangered. You walk around and you'll see all the lizards. They're all tagged, because for scientific research, and I don't think anybody really realizes it's so cool. But that little place is unlike anywhere else. Just seeing all the different life that is on such a small little island that's built off of this country.
You guys actually have a species of Abronia there. I don't know if you knew that or not. But
I did not know that, and probably will never get the chance to see it unless you find a way to get it legally.
Yeah, we're working on it. Abronia Monte Cristo. It's a very rare one.
Yeah, I've honestly only have looked for snakes, and then whatever lizards that we were able to find just that ran across our paths. It was never anything like looking for said species. It was more just going there and see what we could find. And every time I go, I'm always blown away, but it's a shame that, every time I go, just it gets worse and worse as far as just pollution, as far as just people just not caring, and if they don't even care about the place that they live, that just kind of shows for the environment. You know, like what does that have to say for the environment around them?
Yeah, absolutely. So after the Burmese, I know you told me you kept Varanus salvadori, the crocodile monitor.
I kept so to kind of fast forward things, I had Burms. That was the first snake species I've ever bred. After that, I kind of got out of snakes, and it slowly transitioned into monitors. And I started keeping savanna monitors and just the typical, Niles, blackthroats. It was like I was at the age where I had animals to pretty much to where I didn't keep them for long periods of time. And I really honestly, I'm not proud of that, but I was 14 years old, my interest wasn't fully there. I didn't have a set focus of what I wanted to do with these animals. I just liked them, and I was only able to keep so many. So I had to pick and choose what I wanted to keep, and so I had to either make the decision to rehome those animals or give them to friends, or whatever the case may be, because I wanted to, the idea of doing not even so much a breeding project, just keeping the animal and getting to work with that said species was just an idea in my head, and I would get that idea stuck in my head. And, it started off with pretty much the standard basic monitors that are generally available. And obviously, as I slowly got older and older and was able to make money with reptiles, of course, it changed the animals I was keeping. It's not from being a $40 lizard to being, at the time, I was also really big into the Salvatore. That was at the time when Salvatore was being bred in captivity, Salvatore had been bred in captivity throughout the early 90s and throughout the 2000s, but I'd say there was a bit of a more focus revolved around them. I'd say around the time of 2013, 2014, when Chris over at Vital Exotics was really pushing for breeding water monitors. And I remember seeing those animals, and that was, like I said, I had the standard basic, and that was my first real, I guess, quote unquote, investment into an animal, because I had never spent that much money on a set animal. And it was I was one of the second or third clutch of captive born and bred high yellow water monitors that Chris did, and that animal was 15.
Guru line, or
it was half Guru line. They were just, I believe, Marmo macro crosses. It's been so long, honestly, I may be wrong on that information. But they were Guru. Well, because they thought that the Guru came from Marmoratus. Okay. Like I said, I'm so out of date with my monitor stuff these days. I can't even say. I used to know every single thing about all the different Salvatore complex, and that was such a species that I did.
In the Guru animals, was that Al?
There was Gurus that were bred for a number of years. I know Prehistoric Pets and what was the other place?
Reptile Factory
Reptile Factory, that they were doing a lot of stuff, and Pro Exotics was doing a lot of stuff with the Guru back in the early 2000s, and no one really cared too much about them, and then they all vanished. There was one here and there, at a SeaWorld. I know Prehistoric Pets had one, and these animals were literally just withering away on cement. These animals were not being used for any breeding purposes. Because for me, that's still to this day one of my favorite looks of Salvatore. The Guru line is just perfect. I think they're absolutely insane. And but going back to the water monitors, Chris's stuff was the first real investment that I did. It was a $1,500 water monitor, and that was my whole focus was I was I'm gonna get a group of water monitors to try to breed. And around that time, I was also I had a buddy of mine that had a croc monitor, and I saw that animal, and like I said, I had different stuff at the time. I had tegus, and then I had my water monitors, but my water monitors was my main project, and then I got exposed to crocs, maybe a year later. And I had still had all my animals, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, there is absolutely nothing that I've seen, even been around, that acts like that animal.
Yeah.
And I want it, like I said, being I think it was 14, 15. It's really hard to, because I had more than, I was pretty young, and to where it was I learned, I got bit, I can't bend this thumb all the way because of a croc monitor. And this was a nick, you know what I mean? It was one of those things that there's a reason why these animals shouldn't be, let alone with adults that don't know what they're doing, a younger teenage kid, I probably shouldn't have been keeping those animals, but it was one of those things that when you have an idea in your head, I don't think it matters how old you are. Like if you want to do it, you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had the water monitors, and that was like getting to work with that animal. And I remember I told him, I was like, dude, like I don't know what it's gonna take, but I'll give you whatever I have to get that animal. You know, and he was like one of those people that like would get stuff and get bored of it real quick. But I was also at that same stage too. You know, like I would have stuff and have it for maybe a year, you know, year and a half, and then I would want to work with something else. And the thing is, again, I didn't really have a whole lot of income at being so young till I got a little bit older and started breeding stuff, to where it was like, okay, I invested this much into it. I kind of have to either make it back or to do something with it to be able to afford my next project. So it wasn't to where, or my little part-time job at the time, you know, like whatever I could to try to get my projects. And at the time it was just pure enjoyment. There was no breeding. I mean, the idea was to breed them, but in reality it was never probably going to happen because I just didn't have the funds, what was needed, or the space to truly fulfill those projects. But going back to the croc, I remember the first croc that I had, I told you my buddy had it, and I offered him whatever I could, pretty much all, like some of the snakes that I had, some lizards, to equal up the value of that animal. And he eventually he gave in, and I had that animal for a number of years. Her name was Fluffy. That animal was probably my favorite croc. She was like equivalent to Kilo Forrest, like just cool. And like I didn't raise her from a little baby, but she was just one of those animals that just was so awesome to work with. And it definitely, like, I don't have any large monitors at the moment, but if I were to keep another large monitor again besides a lace, it would definitely be a croc again. And the fact that you guys have little ones, I mean, it's just so jealous. And it always makes me realize, I'm like, oh, dude, I miss this, you know, like, and they're so perfect, you know, I mean, in comparison to the adults that you'd see, they come in with their face all mashed up, and, you know, they hate you, and they don't want to, they hate being in captivity, in comparison to seeing those that they're like, oh, this isn't so bad, you know, like, and they realize like, oh, you know, but I think crocs make decent captives as long as you set them up correctly. I mean, they're an animal that,
they need proper setup.
They need proper setups. Yeah. I mean, that's with anything though. I mean, especially with like lizards, but the thing is, they're also very tough animals. And if you provide them the bare minimum that they need, they'll still survive, but they won't essentially thrive.
Thriving. How long has it been since you've had a monitor, or let alone a croc monitor? I mean, how long?
I got rid of that stuff like probably had it for no more than like 2 years, like 2.5 years, like just because again I just had so much different interests of what I want. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like I enjoyed keeping snakes, I enjoyed keeping lizards, but I didn't have the room to do both. So it was kind of like going back and forth, you know, getting in out of snakes, getting in out of lizards, and finally, I mean, I eventually worked my way back to snakes, but
what you need to do is you need to find a Stephen Cush. That way he could breed all the snakes, and then that way you could just focus on monitors.
Or what you could do is just keep the little versions of everything that you like, and then just keep as many as you can.
Don't have too much stuff, man.
Yeah, no, that too, man. Having too much stuff gets burned out quick. I'd rather just have everything. Like, I mean, my goal within the next 5 to 10 years is to definitely have everything in my room be produced by me.
And it almost seems like it could go from like, man, I'm really loving this, to like, God damn it,
I'm really hating this. You know what I mean? Yeah, for sure.
Heartbeat. Like, I mean, I it's almost making me bipolar, dude, where I'm like fucking just like, you know, skipping for days, fucking all happy about my room. And the next, you know, I didn't want to go in my room. I'm just like, fuck. I just know what I'm about to face. I know what animal I have to pull out, and I don't want to deal with it. Yada yada yada, and fucking. So, but at the end of the day, you got to dig deep, and you fucking. I'm actually in too deep at this point, and I don't even need to ask Forrest that. He's fucking Jesus Christ. He's in shit. You know, he's in it. You know, and at least he has Stephen Cush, and I know you've been in it for a while, Andrew. I think when was it when you were like, fuck, man, you almost wanted to throw the towel in at some point. I mean,
every 6 months.
I know we were talking.
You know, like I get a moment like that, like every few months, where I just get so fed up, you know, with everything. And it's not even so much like the people or anything. It's more just like what happens with breeding these animals. I obviously want to get into that a little bit further along, but I mean, it's so easy to get, you know, from point A to point B with what we're trying to talk about. But going back to the lizards, yeah, I kept them for a number of years. Like I said, I had the berms from when like 12 to maybe 15, and then I had my lizards and my snakes, but it was mostly the focus of lizards kind of transitioned from like 15 to like 17, and then from there I still had snakes on the side, but I wasn't doing anything with anything. I had just had animals at this point. This was just stuff that I enjoyed keeping. I had a little bit of everything, berms, retics, and my monitors, and it eventually got to the point where I would just felt kind of overwhelmed with what I had, and felt the need to kind of refocus, and I eventually like slimmed down almost to where I had almost nothing. And then I had been exposed again to being around snakes just throughout my entire time keeping. So I always had an enjoyment with snakes more in comparison to keeping lizards, just because lizards require just
A lot of fucking work.
a lot more work in comparison to snakes do. But growing up, that was just my first, love of reptiles with snakes. So, it was kind of one of those things that like, it was always in the back of my head that like, maybe I should just focus on snakes. And I mean, I still feel like that, but even though I still have kind of the same stuff, just smaller versions of it. I still have monitors. I still have different lizard species. I still have snakes, but I mean, my main focus is obviously reticulated pythons at this point. But kind of going back to that, to where, again, being around all these different animals, but then getting exposed to different things that's in such a fast time frame too. Like to think about this, it was all happening at such a quick time frame that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I had also been exposed to other people's collections to where I was like, whoa, this is absolutely amazing. And this is kind of what I want to aspire to do. And the first time I really got that, like, whoa, I want to do it like this, was seeing other reticulated python keepers' collections. That was kind of where like I had went into a snake room and I saw a snake, wall to wall. Everything was just, one focus. And it kind of like made me realize, I was like, man, maybe I should just do that, because finding something you're truly passionate about and just becoming so obsessed with it. And and that was really berms at first. But I was so young, and we were doing this out of my friend's house, you know what I mean? Till I was able to move stuff in my place. And even then, like, I didn't have professional setups, but seeing my first real, like, legit setups were with other retic keepers. Doug Fishgrun was like my first mentor, and as well as John Kerrigan. Those are guys that, I mean, if it wasn't for them, like I wouldn't be here, like with keeping my retics as far as where I'm at. Even like they didn't essentially, what's the words I'm looking for? They mentored me, but in essence of me just being there, you know what I mean? Like they would show me, but I already knew how to work with snakes, but it was just more getting the exposure of seeing higher end animals and seeing breeding at a real scale, like seeing you walk into a snake room and there's 20 adults, 30 raise ups, and you're just like, whoa, like here I am with my 5 snakes, and this is nothing, to where these guys were. And it definitely kind of changed my perspective to what I wanted to do. And retics were slowly, like I said, I had them here and there, but when I started really being around them on a regular basis, I kind of realized, I was like, oh, I found my niche, and that was keeping reticulated pythons. And I couldn't keep many of them just due to the fact how big they got. So the idea of keeping smaller snakes at the time, like I didn't know too much about them, but I knew that smaller reticulated python species existed, and I didn't really know where to get them. And it was just kind of an idea. I remember like being, like I said, in the transitioning of like getting out of lizards, like I was like, oh, maybe I'll try to get super dwarf retics and try to breed them. That was just like an idea that like, I remember being in the car and I had like talked to my friend about it, and he was the one who I'd kept Burmese pythons with, but we weren't even keeping snakes at his place at the time. It was just more just me speaking out loud and just telling him like, hey, I want to do this with these group of snakes. I know you don't really care, but I'm going to tell you anyways, like this is what I want to do. And it kind of started with just being around all the mainland species and going to Doug's place and seeing his entire basement set up, and seeing animals that at the time there was still only a handful of, like just like some real first level morph stuff that was just being produced at the time, where I was just like, wow, this is someone that has invested time, dedication, and just enjoys keeping these animals, to where it's like, this is what I want to aspire to be like, maybe not the said person, but as far as keeping animals to that scale and being able to be like, this is to me, that was a legitimate setup, you know, in comparison to now where I've seen different people's facilities to where it's like, oh man, like what I thought I wanted then in comparison to what I want now is, you know,
something else.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How long was that? My bad, Forrest. How long ago was that when you first saw that your buddy Doug's like collection of super dwarfs? I was like, what?
No, it was just regular. It was mainlands. These were like 15, 16 foot retics. Like these were real deal snakes. The super dwarfs were just an idea. Like I hadn't really even seen any, you know, at the time. This was more. I just knew they existed.
Who'd you get your first set of super dwarfs from?
Who did I get my first super?
What were the first super dwarfs? Were those the coyote?
No, mine were Calatoas, and Rod
came out.
No, those were just what I found at the time, and it was. I remember just looking through King Snake, and someone just had an ad of just a bunch of different animals that he was getting rid of. All of them were mainland, but he had a Calatoa female that he was just like SD female for sale. $600, and I remember I saw it, and this was like the idea of just wanting to get it. Like I known Rodney Bolich, and that's who, you know, it's crazy to think the people that I'm revolved around now are like close personal friends of mine, you know what I mean? But like growing up, like I looked up to these people. I knew who they were, even though they had no idea who I was. I just wanted to know everything and anything that they could possibly tell me about snakes in general, and mainly just retics, not even so much super dwarfs, just the snakes in general, just being able to talk about them. And just those were at the time what I felt those were like the most legit dudes that I could have access to, especially with just coming to the internet and just knowing that there was a whole different world of people, you know, that was at the palm of my fingertips to be able to gain information and also just see pictures and just being able to see just how other people do stuff. And it definitely kind of inspired me to where, you know, like what I wanted to do with these snakes. But going back to what you were saying, Forrest, the first person, it was a random dude out in California that was getting rid of this animal, and I got it. And that animal, actually, I never did anything with that animal. That animal lived in my place for almost 4.5, 5 years, and she died last year due to breeding issues, and I'll get more into that a little bit later on as far as with keeping and breeding. But yeah, it was just a random fauna classified ad, and she was like the first one. She definitely was like a wild caught female. She had these big buggy eyes, looked like that she lived in a cave her entire life, and she had this crazy silver pattern. Oh man, that snake till this day was like the epitome of what I think like Calatoas should look like. And that snake was just so perfect, even though I never bred that snake. And that was like the one snake, like out of all the snakes I've had, especially retic wise, like if I would have seen her on eggs, like if I had to pick one snake to see on eggs and never get to see any other snake breed again, that would be her. You know, it would be her. And I remember, I still don't even like talking about, you know, like losing stuff, but it's the name of the game.
The history of the dwarfing, though, I mean, it started out with what, like the Jampayas?
Well, it started off with, I mean, just these animals that were imported in, that were unlabeled, that happened to be smaller than the normal retics that were being brought in. And and honestly, super dwarf still to this day is just a marketing standpoint for them. I mean, there's no, you know, like that's at the end of the day, they're just Calatoa, you know what I mean? I just call them by what they are. This is, you know, a Calatoa reticulated python. I don't essentially call them super dwarfs, but in a sense of marketing for them, sure, but I don't have to. It's more just that I call them by what they are. Like, this is a Ternate Island. This is this is a Mindanao locality. This is a Madu. You know, I call them by exactly what they are. You know, I mean, giving them dwarf, super dwarf, mainland, that's just what you want to describe them as for a marketing standpoint, to describe their sizes, as where mainlands get anywhere from 13 to 18 feet, even bigger. And then you get dwarfs that are kind of in that 9 to 12, 13 foot range. And then you get super dwarfs from like 6 to 10 foot, you know, and that's just the way for you, when you hear super dwarf, you think of super small. So that's it. You know, that's the best way for you to understand it. You not knowing a single thing about what they are, where they come from, you know, and what makes a quote unquote super dwarf. You know what I mean? Like there's the 3 standard, Jampianus and Sutrii. You know, like that's the standard groups of what dwarf and super dwarf are I'm like forgetting everything that I wanted to say.
Jampia would be like dwarf, and then what is it? Sutrii would be
that's the super dwarfs. That's that's Karampa, Madu, Kalatoa. But I truly
Coyote, is that
Kaiwati, and Kaiwati, they're right next to each other, and they're Sailor Islands, and they're
those are the first ones I seen that they were calling super dwarfs that I remember.
Kaiwati is still like one of those things that I still it's like on that dwarf super dwarf spectrum. I just think they're smaller snakes. I mean, I've seen bigger ones, and I think with anything, no matter what they are, if you feed them, you know, just pythons in general, like any, you know, carpet pythons, scrub pythons, reticulated pythons, you feed a snake an excessive amount of food, whether if that snake is meant to get big or not, it's going to get large and fat. You know, it's one of those things that in captivity, it's to define size as far as what those animals actually grow. I think it just includes with what you're feeding them, especially in a captive setting.
I've heard I mean, this guy's obviously, you know, he's a retic breeder. He breeds nothing but retic. He came out with a YouTube video talking about how you can make any fucking retic a dwarf or super dwarf by the amount that you feed it. Is that true?
I can't say that's true. You know what I mean? Because I have animals here that I feed on a weekly basis, you know, every 2 weeks that are, I mean, for example, MJ, you got a female that from me that's almost 3 years old that you've pound from the minute you've got her. She's eaten solid every week.
I don't pound her. She destroys her fucking face.
But that snake is no bigger than what? 8 foot? You know what I mean?
She's less than that. She's like,
you know what I mean? And that's only a 50%er.
So basically, I mean, because I'm still kind of new with retics. I mean, I'm comparing her to other snakes that I have, but she should be, if she was a normal mainland retic, she should be a lot bigger than what she is now.
I would definitely say so. A snake that you're feeding guinea pigs, a mainland, you know, any mainland retic, I mean, you feed them hard in that first year of life, you'll definitely get a much larger snake in comparison to like looking at the two different, comparing the two, you know, these locality-based animals in comparison to mainland morph animals and comparing them to size-wise as far as like a feeding regimen. I think Travis Cubes or Jason Reed had like a whole dialogue of like feeding animals once a week in comparison to mainlands and super dwarfs, and they were feeding them mice every week for a year straight. I think it was something along those lines, and just to see the different growth rates. And I truly believe the animal size has a lot to do with the mother. That's I think because you can breed because like I said, for what truly defines a super dwarf, you know what I mean? That's more, like I said, a marketing standpoint, because you can breed a super dwarf male to a mainland female and make 50% super dwarf crosses.
Right.
Does that essentially make those animals super dwarf because you're breeding a 15-foot snake to a 6-foot locality based male?
It's in the blood, but it's
no, it doesn't. I mean, it definitely has to. Size definitely has to do with the mother.
It all
without a doubt.
Yeah, it all lands on the parents. It all lands on the mother for sure.
For sure, they take after the mom. You know, as far as I think, you know, the females are a large contributing factor. Like you could have the craziest males, but at the end of the day, they're going to take a lot after their mom. You know, it's definitely how I think at least it works. You know, I mean, most of the snakes that I try to get the best, or at least when I want to do breedings, I try to pick, you know, what I think the babies will look with, just, you know, without even having to, I guess, having the snakks in hand to have an idea of what I want them to already, the characteristics that I'm looking for when breeding these animals.
Yeah. Let's go back to how I even met you, how I even purchased, how I even got involved in buying the snake off of you. Shout out to the homie Kenny, man. Remember, you know what Kenny, you talked to Kenny recently?
Kenny is one of the first people that I met off Instagram when I first got on, like, learning about, you know, the internet platform of being able to, that other people like me kept animals and did the same thing.
Right.
And Kenny was one of the first people that ever reached out to me, and you know, still to this day is like one of my close friends, even though I don't see him on a regular basis. That is, he was one of the first people to like really put me on, definitely, like how Instagram like worked, and realizing he's like, hey, like you can do all this stuff with this, you know, because for the longest time I just had these animals and I just had these pictures saved to myself. You know, I never had the idea of like, oh, I can share these animals online because there's other people just like me that enjoy keeping them.
Free networking, man.
And Kenny was one of those few people that reached out to me just on such a genuine level, and you know, still to this day. Kenny's one of those like super low key dudes that are.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Kenny. Kenny's cold-blooded only, or yeah,
cold-blooded only? Yeah, cold-blooded only on Instagram. Kenny was definitely right there with me in the beginning when I started doing the retic stuff and just seeing to where I'm at now. And it's crazy to think like all the people I started with in comparison to where they're at. I mean, a lot of those people that I started with don't keep retics anymore, you know, and it was more just the fact that I still stuck through and still doing it and still have the enjoyment of these snakes. It wasn't just a fad because like talking about before of just not really knowing what I wanted to do and just having the idea of keeping the snake, for keeping this animal for said period of time and then getting something else because I got bored, you know, and that was when I had no idea. And then, like I said, getting those group of animals and just focusing on keeping retics and then slowly transitioning to locality-based animals. But that came longer with time. But Kenny was definitely right there with me right in the beginning to see from where I started to where I'm at now.
So
without a doubt.
Let's talk about, you know, the challenges that you face with anything that you breed. I mean, so basically your main focus or what you're breeding right now is super dwarfs, right?
Yeah. Right? Yeah, so that's been my main focus since I started keeping retics. That was I didn't breed any mainland retics myself at my house. Anything that I did was either with other keepers and was animals that I had left in their care, pretty much doing breeder loans and stuff like that. But I didn't start breeding retics till I started keeping super dwarfs at my house. That was
tell us the joys of breeding super dwarfs.
Oh, that is probably the least favorite thing that comes. You know, it's probably the most stressful thing when it comes to breeding these animals.
Fucking tell me more, please. Tell me about, because you told me a couple stories about them being and all sorts of shit, and it's kind of like, you know, disheartening, especially when all your fucking banging bucks are on this pairing or on, you know.
See, for me, it's not even like, it's just the time, dude. It's just investing that much time into a group of animals and just having stuff happen.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really just the negatives that come with it. But as far as going back to Kenny was, like I said, the first few people, and he helped me actually do like some of my first sales just because I wasn't really focused on selling any of these animals. I just wanted to produce them, and if I had happened to have any extras on the side, that'd be great. And Kenny he was like one of the first few people that I knew that had a following online, like a social media standpoint, to where he was able to help me move animals. And I remember for the first like year or two, he would help me sell animals. And if it wasn't for Kenny, I wouldn't even know you.
That's why I had to bring him up, because I mean he's been a lot less active on social media since I met him, and you know where he was at keeping retics. Oh yeah, like
Kenny,
he got down because he was where he's at, it's illegal. So he fucking I was able to benefit off of that. He sold me some of his fucking holdbacks, and I'm just raising him up.
Kenny kept stuff in Jersey. He lived in New York. He kept stuff in Jersey. It was just a hassle to where he had to commute from the city to Jersey to keep his snakes.
So he had a downsides, and I don't know what kind of geckos he has, but he has some sick ass fucking geckos that he's always.
His main focus now is definitely cresteds and gargoyle geckos. Yeah.
Yeah, but he still. I mean, I don't know. I think he still has his bat eater.
No, he doesn't have any. Kenny has 0 snakes.
Oh, all right, we'll talk later. But he still has a couple bangers that
he's like, I'm so sick of snakes. Like,
yeah, I bet, dude. I know, especially he has like a plate in his arm now or some shit. He fucked up his arm and shit. But man, shout out to the homie Kenny, man. I mean, if you guys want to check him out, cold-blooded only. He's on Instagram.
Realist. Kenny.
He literally has paved the way for me in so many different ways. One of the greatest paves he's ever laid out for me was meeting Andrew, and because me and you kind of hit it off, and we spun off and did our own thing after that. We kind of built our own relationship.
I remember you had contacted me, and I hated when I first started producing snakes. I hated selling to people just because of how annoying people were. And I remember like you had messaged me and like you had said something, and I was just like, all right, whatever, dude. You know what I mean? Like you sound like everyone else that messages me. You know what I mean? So,
oh my God.
No, because dude, at the time, like, I
wasn't a window shopper though, right?
No, I knew that. No, you weren't window shopping. It was more just you just like said something to me, and I don't even remember what it was, and I was just like, who does this guy think he is? You know what I mean? Like, You know, like I'm like, I don't even want to sell these snakes, dude. You know what I mean? I'm having my friends sell it, but the thing is, he's gonna contact you, and you know, he wants to buy the snake, and you know what I mean? All I told Kenny, I was like, I have these snakes for sale, help me sell them, and he'd be like, what's your PayPal? That's it. That's all I was used to dealing with. So like, you were definitely like, besides, because I grew up in an era of just doing Craigslist for a long time. You know, like I met people just directly. This wasn't something like I had to wait for you to send me money. It was more just like, hey, I'll meet you at this location at this said time, and I'm giving you cash. You know, obviously, probably not the safest thing.
People hate on Craigslist, but dude,
Craigslist was a come up. If you didn't come up on Craigslist starting, like, you're missing out. You're missing out.
I'm not fucking, you know, I'm not.
Craigslist is shot now. I don't.
Craigslist is it's a dead end now, because all, you know, they have their own
crack down on rule. I think they cracked down on like animal sales or something like that.
Trash now. It's just people would just fucking.
Dude, Craigslist was the place back in the day.
You have to be crackhead wanting money and like, you know, to be selling the amount of prices that these people are looking for. But now I kind of steer away.
Like the sketchy.
I'm telling you, like going back maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I guarantee you, like a lot of reptile keepers can tell you, they made come ups off Craigslist, like without a doubt. Like I remember, like that was the only, like I wasn't using Fauna, I wasn't using Instagram, I wasn't using Facebook or any type of social media platform. It was literally, I post stuff on Craigslist. That day I'd get emails about stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of window shoppers, but hey, Craigslist was like, I would get contact, I would get emailed message on a regular basis. And like I said, being young, that was my form of making money when it came to having to sell animals, which was my local Craigslist. You know, I mean, you know, that's probably the most dangerous place to be selling animals. You know what I mean? Like just meeting up with a random stranger and just hope that they're not gonna, you know, I mean, me being, you know, a teenager, I personally wouldn't, you know, like do that. I still don't like to meet people. You know, at this point, I'm just like, unless I'm at a show or other than that, I mean. You know, I don't meet people I used to meet people at my house. There was no big deal. Like, you know what I mean? Bring them inside, like just reckless, dude. I'd never do that. Do that shit now.
Predator or something, man.
Yeah, dude. You know what I mean? I'm surprised I didn't get, you know, kidnapped or raped or something horrible, you know, like, or someone come and break into my house and steal my entire animals. I mean, I also didn't have that money, but that was cool at least.
Stephen Cush, how many transactions have you had on Craigslist to date?
Not one. Look at
oh, jeez, dude. Yeah, you didn't come up on Craigslist. He's like, oh man,
I have never even visited that website.
He's like, I don't even know how to spell it.
Yeah,
what is that? .org or is that an edu?
Yeah, right.
No. Is that an edu?
Damn. Fuck it. I mean, look, we do
get. Like, it's not even his vocabulary. You know,
his vocabulary is actually like insanely extensive from the.
I learned coloration. What else did I learn from Stephen Cush? I steal a couple things from his stories. I just fucking I kind of linger it with my ghetto language, with my, you know, cuss words and stuff. But I do throw some words that I was able to steal off Stephen Cush. Real quick, you know, you got a couple people with questions up in the chat. You know, I would say right now. I didn't
see any of them, but go ahead.
I got Novi Reptiles. This young.
Oh yeah, Novi. I can definitely say that is definitely, like, for anyone. There's very few people that I've seen that are at her age. She's got a collection better than like grown than most grown men. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you guys know who this girl is.
Yeah. They're on Instagram. Novi.
I don't know Novi's Instagram, but whatever it is, definitely give it a Novi Reptiles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I'm telling you, that girl at her age, I wish I had.
So one thing,
I wish I had my head where she is. You know, like
dog.
One thing she's looking for, and I'm sure this is going to help a lot of other people out there, but she's trying to find the best place to find information regarding, you know, pure super dwarf localities or even dwarf lineage and stuff like that. Like, what's a good place to research info, you know, and reptile, you know, stuff from people who've done it and stuff like that. You know,
a lot of the people that, I mean, and not a lot of the people, more just a lot of the information that I gained was from Rodney Bolich, because I was fortunate enough to have him at the Hamburg show, and I would always go to his table and annoy him and ask him a bunch of questions. He was definitely he was like an encyclopedia of just information, and anytime I ever had questions, he was just right there, you know. And he was like one of the few people that were also very nice to me in the beginning. Like when I was coming up, like not a lot of the retic guys were nice to me. You know what I mean? They just thought I was just this punk kid that wanted to keep snakes, you know, just like them, you know. But in reality, like, no, I had finally found my niche of what I wanted to do, and I had realized this were the snakes that I really wanted to invest my time and realize, like, okay, like if I'm going to invest time, money, and energy into this, this is what I'm going to do it. And I remember, just like I said, if Doug and John, those were guys that were just also just so genuine with me at such a young age, like they took me on, you know, because looking at it now, I mean, it's hard for yourself, Forrest, do you know many 14-year-olds that you'd be willing to have around your collection on a regular basis? And you too, you like, you know what I mean? Like, who would you take on at that age that you were like, I know that he's going to do something with this, or I feel the need that I can trust him around to be around my animals. Like, they must have saw something in me, you know, besides me being an annoying little kid.
And you're normally, when you, I mean, some people can, but like you probably had something that was fucking just burning in your eyes, and he probably could see the dedication. You probably weren't asking for anything. You just wanted to be.
I just wanted to be there. I just wanted to be there, dude. I drive 40 minutes an hour just to come clean snakes. You know what I mean? Just because I wanted to be around.
Right,
for free, dude. Just because I wanted to be there.
It seems like they don't get that, you know. Like they think like, yeah.
Dude, I remember driving before I had my license. I took my mom's car one time because like I was allowed to do like go around the block, because like in New Jersey you have to be 16 and with someone that has a license. You know what I mean? Like, as where in some states 16 you guys have your licenses. I think, you know, I'm not sure, but for us, you know, I remember taking my mom's car. I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to go run an errand real quick, like down the street. And she was like, okay, like not okay with it, but okay with it. And I drove 40 minutes by myself. I remember that was the first time I ever, like, thinking about how much, like, if I would have got pulled over or something would have happened, you know what I mean? Like, how terrible that would have been. But I remember he told me, he was like, I have eggs, come see them. And I had no one to take me. And I remember at the time, I think we had like an extra car or something. And I remember I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to take the car. She's like, okay. You know, like, probably didn't know where I was going. And I remember going to see those things. And it was just, like I said, I did that from time that I was like 16 to 18, I'd say, just on every weekend. You know what I mean? And even though I had snakes, like, it was just being around those animals, and it was just seeing that collection to that standpoint. It was just motivating, because I was like, I need to keep pushing hard and being around these animals and getting, because I knew the animals that they had, you know, like they knew how much they knew I just cared about the animals. I didn't care so much about making money off of it or doing anything with that. I just wanted to keep the animals. So I knew if I stuck around and I helped them out, they would take care of me in the end when it came to animals. And that's all I wanted to be repaid with, was just animals.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I mean, it was something that I just kept doing it. You know what I mean? I just, like I said, they took me pretty much under their wing and just showing me and seeing animals that, you know, like a lot of, you know, even other high-end keepers weren't seeing at the time. So it was just a privilege to just be around all these animals that were just so select and few at the time, that I was just like, man, you know, like, so as we're now, like, I feel so privileged to see everything, or have kept a lot of the stuff that I have, to where it's like, for me to get excited about certain things, it's kind of almost like hard, because, you know, throughout the years, I've seen different things that really, you know, like, it's hard to be like, whoa, you know, like that's an animal that truly blows me away. You know what I mean? Because that's the thing, I still get that feeling, but to where it's like, it's few and far in between these days, you know, like because a lot of the stuff that makes me go, whoa, we can't get, you know, or I just can't afford it, or whatever the case may be. It's just most of the time we just can't get it.
I think it's funny that, remember, I don't know when it was, but I would remember sending you pictures of like my chondros locking, and you would just be like, we'll see. Or you
no, when people talk about breeding, like,
you'd be like day by day, or like you'd be like something where you'd be like, you still got a long way to go, dude. And it's dude, so true. Because now I'm just like, yeah, you're right. It's not fucking like, I mean, it really ain't shit, you know, like there's so much still long, like there's still long to go before you can fucking celebrate anything, you know what I mean? And
dude, even till this day, like breeding, like seeing my animals lock up, seeing them till I see babies in my hand, that's when I get excited. Eggs don't even, eggs just like, okay, we're one step closer. Eggs don't even really excite me that much. I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen from now till the time that these eggs could hatch? That's all I think about. I'm like, is there going to be a storm that's going to knock our power out for a week, and there goes everything that I've worked for the entire year? You know what I mean? it's like one of those things, like, to me, I've had so many negatives happen in the years coming up. I mean, like I said, I also had a lot of positives with seeing all these animals and being able to be around them and kind of finding my niche and having people, because telling before, I was kind of everywhere thinking about like our conversation before. I didn't really have a straight setting of what I was really saying. I was just kind of bouncing back and forth, but kind of really coming into scheme of things, it was like, finding that niche and telling myself, okay, like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to keep these snakes.
Tuition. That's your tuition, is volunteering, learning.
Yeah, learning. Yeah. And just being around every weekend. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't go out. You know what I mean? Like, I all that other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I gave up. I mean, I could definitely say, like, when I was in high school, like focusing on animals. And like I said, once I started driving, that was a game changer for me. Like, I was able to go to shows on my own. Like, there was no stopping me, and that was what really pushed it. And I think, like, I was like a junior in high school at the time, because I was driving and I was able to see stuff, and I was working a little bit. So I was able to do things a little bit more, and I was slowly breeding stuff. I had like breeding loans with other people because I wasn't able to keep a lot of the mainland stuff here. I had only like mainly raised ups and only one larger female at the time, just because it just took so much space in comparison to like one 16-foot snake can take up, the amount of what my four my four locality based animals, you know what I mean? Like, in comparison. So it's not logical to keep, a snake that gets that big, especially when you're limited on space.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. So, what point did you seem to get involved with? I mean, you're really kind of part of the core clicky monitor expert group, whether it's, John from SimHatch and Ryan Waterloo.
And see, the thing is, like, I've the only monitors that I've actually bred are dwarf monitors. Like, the thing is, I was just a nerd about the different localities of Salvatore, and just I the same thing that I did with the retics was pretty much what I did with the monitors, just like asking all these guys different questions. And I wasn't essentially doing as much putting in the time. I would just more like just being exposed to, again, coming up on the internet, learning that these people were there and just asking them questions that I wanted to know, because I was genuinely interested. And again, like, till I had been introduced to Salvatore was the complex of animals that I wanted to know about every locality, as far as keeping them, breeding them, whatever it took, even though I never even got close to breeding them. It was just a species that I was just amazed by. And I still, to this day, like, water monitors are still one of, like, they're so commonly bred at this point, but I think they're still such an amazing lizard. They just get so big, and it keeps a lot of people have them that shouldn't, and I think that goes for a lot of things.
Like somebody like John Adrania, I mean, like, that's such a top mind, and
John is literally a textbook when it comes to the Salvatore complex. You want to learn about a Salvatore complex. There's probably no one that I know that has spent more time focusing on one said species of one complex, not species, one complex of animals more than John has. If you go to, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have all these people within, an hour radius of me, and just, they were just so nice to me. Like I said, a lot of people weren't nice to me coming up, but it's crazy that the people that like had the most insight and information were also the nicest to me, and just saw that I wasn't just some other kid that wanted to just keep animals as a fad, even though maybe I was keeping the animals that I had not long-term, like the animals itself were a fad, but me being the time that I wanted to invest into being around reptiles wasn't. This was something I knew from a young age, that I'm going to keep reptiles for the rest of my life. As long as I physically can, I don't care what it is. I may not have found the niche at that time because I was so young trying to figure out what I really wanted. But at the same time, like, I knew that this is what I wanted, like, I wanted to be around reptiles, and I did whatever it took, to get to that point. Like, moving forward, from high school, like, I didn't go away to a 4-year university. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get to have the quote unquote college experience. You know why? Because I wanted to work, because I wanted to keep snakes. Because that idea was going to last longer than any, going partying and hanging out with friends ever could. You know what I mean? The envisionment seemed way more fun than having what every other kid does after high school, which is go to college. And, I mean, Steven, you're a little bit closer to my age, so for you to like stop what you were doing, or like do what the standard of what every kid does after graduating high school, and you're like, no, I want I want to focus on my animal. Like you're just like, no, I want to focus on animals. And that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, we had to talk his parents into letting him drop out of college. And it was pretty rough.
But I mean, would you change it? Do you have regrets? Do you still feel like that you should go back to school or?
No, absolutely not.
Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of, I mean,
when I was about 15, that college would have been a total waste of time. And I went and I was like, yep, I'm right. And I left.
Yeah, no, that's where I was at. I mean, like, I did my 2 years and I was of school and that was straight hell, just forcing myself. And at the same time, I did this because I was like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. But at the same time, I knew I was like, I wanted to just keep snakes, man. That's it. I just wanted to keep my reptiles and I just wanted to focus on nothing but that. That was the only thing at that time that like actually made sense. That is like, listen, I got nothing else going on that's going right for me, but I will say I have a lot of knowledge for these animals and a lot of love for them. And I know that if I stick to it, something's eventually going to work out. And whether if that's being me doing this going to school for this or just making it my life's goal, whatever that may be, to just be dedicated and devoted to these animals. And like I said, I didn't really have a said idea of what I wanted, but I knew it had to be with animals.
Yeah.
Like without a doubt.
Yeah. You're killing it too, man. It's pretty awesome. I think
like I said, in those few years, like really bounced around from having monitors, berms, to retics, and then kind of finding that niche, like I said, right at the end, and having those people really kind of grounded me because I had no one to kind of help guide me. You know what I mean? It was more just like literally my own ideas of what I wanted, but having very few means of doing so, to being around people that are like, okay, no, this is our focus and this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to do it. And being able to be around that.
How did you and Garrett Hartle link?
Garrett was the few people, like I said, like when I started watching, like realizing like people breeding snakes and wanting to do that on a bigger spectrum, like watching Brian BARCZYK and Garrett, finding Jay at Prehistoric Pets, and one of the few people that did videos was Garrett, and he was still at that time was an advocate for the Superdwarfs, and he was also, I think, kind of like one of the first people that kind of like introduced them to me one way or another, even if he knows it or not, just from seeing those videos. You know what I mean? I remember him talking about it, and I think that idea kind of came to mind, like, oh, if I could ever keep and breed retics on a big scale, those would be the ones that I do because I can keep more of them. And that's, for me, I'm selfish. I just want to keep as many as I can. You know what I mean? Like if I'm fortunate enough to produce these snakes, I'm going to keep them. And I think that's on a breeding standpoint, that is so important. Like just being able to produce snakes that you want. It's not producing snakes to just sell. Like being able to produce snakes that you want is the greatest feeling. As we're just producing snakes to produce snakes, it's boring. Like I could definitely say where I had projects that I had invested in and I was just doing it to kind of like, oh, like I know they'll sell well, but in comparison to like keeping stuff that you're genuinely passionate about and put time and effort into it, it's just such a more rewarding feeling. Like breeding any reptile is such an amazing feeling, but breeding something that you just obsess about on a regular basis, is just, it's a whole different feeling. Like I remember hatching, the first Superdwarf babies that I've ever hatched out. Like that was a feeling like, but you want to know the worst part about it? Like I said, going to what MJ was saying about heartbreaks. The first eggs that I ever hatched out, I witnessed those babies come out of the egg. Well, no, I'll say this. I was in the hospital before the mom laid, and I just wasn't doing well, and I came back home like after being away for like a week, and the only thing I was looking forward to was that snake laying, and she had laid almost all slugs, and I was just so upset. You know what I mean? Like this was one of the first snakes I ever got to breed in, when I started breeding the locality animals, because the only retics that I've bred at my house have all been just locality based and locality based morph crosses. Like all the other stuff was all joint breedings or stuff that I did, but other than that, like as far as retics that were being bred at my house, they were all locality based animals. That's where I started. And
have you successfully bred any wild caught females?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Some of the first stuff that I got, some of the first breedings that I did were with wild caught females. This female that gave me eggs was like one of those wild caught females. And again, she gave me mostly duds, but there was 4 good eggs. And those eggs, went the distance. No, well, 2 of them went full term, and I cut those eggs. First eggs that I ever cut by myself. Then I remember putting the eggs back in the incubator, and I remember I had a little makeshift. I still have that makeshift incubator. I still use it. Where I had them, and I just had this was just the most beginner mistake ever, just not having your probe set up properly in the incubator, and it slipped out of the incubator. Like literally, I just cut these eggs. I saw these snakes literally have their first breaths, like practically crawl out into my hand. I put them back in the incubator. I was like, oh, you guys need another day to absorb your yolk. The next day I go downstairs, the probe had been messed up, and it overcooked and killed the first babies I ever hatched out. And I wanted to quit right there and then, because I was like, this is the worst feeling ever. Like I cried, I'll be honest. I cried. Like I saw it and I was just like, I never put so much work into something in my entire life. Like nothing has ever come close to how much time and like what felt like an eternity, like just because I was just so committed to it, even though it was only, maybe 2 years of my life that I dedicated to it before I even saw eggs. But it was like one of those things where I was like, I had never put in so much effort into something, and just of course the one time I do it, it goes to shit. But that was kind of like just the start of where everything started to go wrong. But I was definitely I was committed to making a snake that I wanted to make, and the idea of making that snake has got me to where I'm at now, and I'll kind of talk more into that project. As far as again having that happen again, I was devastated, and I was like, man, this is horrible. Like, why would this happen? Of course, the first babies I ever hatch out that crawl into my hand die not even 24 hours later because I made a simple mistake of not setting the probe properly. Like, are you serious? Like that just months of hard work gone in a day.
Yeah.
And it was like I said, I didn't really have a lot of people to kind of like look for advice, so it was just really just upsetting for me. But at the same time, I knew I was like, I saw what it was like to hatch my own babies, my own retic babies at my house, and it was something because hatching out berms is like breeding ball pythons. They hatch in 60 days, it's super quick. Retics, they take 80 days. So like 80, even sometimes 90 days, depending on what you're cooking them at. Most of the time it's 80, 82. Anywhere from for the locality stuff, anywhere from like 76 to 82, 83 days. That's the general standard. I mean, I think late 80s is for retics is just the set standard of like.
How long do they usually carry the eggs for? I mean,
okay, so like as far as like breeding, okay, so I'd say it really depends on the timing of when you put in the males, honestly, because you could have breeding gone for a month, but the only breeding that's actually crucial is the last week prior to her,
But if she ovulates and if she prelays shed, how long?
Oh, from the moment that from her point of ovulation to the point of going into prelay shed, normally about. It depends on the female, honestly. I've had females go from the point of ovulate like 10 days, to 2 weeks. Yeah, 10 days to 2 weeks. You know what I mean? I honestly don't even keep track of that stuff anymore because it doesn't. For me, I just know that okay, she's swelling.
Yeah.
And then she sheds. That's it. I just know that's part of it. Like I don't keep track. I don't write down notes. Like I respect everyone that does, but I just don't. You know what I mean? That I used to, but it drove me crazy. It drove me crazy. I was literally like, if it isn't going by this, something's gonna happen. And it's just not for me. I'm just not that kind of person. So I was like, I just put them in. I'll document when they breed, and that's really it. And I'll just have them go through the motions. Especially when you do it a couple times, it's one of those things like. You don't need you just know everything kind of falls into place. I mean, like Michael, like look at like from where you first started breeding your first clutch of ball pythons to where you're at now. You know it, like clockwork, what's going to happen. You know what I mean? You don't need to, palpate every single female. You just know that during this time frame when she goes off food, throw in a male, see how she responds, and move forward from there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still palpate the females, but it's not like where everyone that has has a
ultrasound.
Oh, yeah, an ultrasound. You know what I mean? To have, and that's awesome to people that do. But I mean, most people don't have access to it. So, for the most part, when you're first starting to breed snakes, it's a little science experiment. But once you do it, that science experiment 1 or 2 times, kind of know what the outcome is going to be, whether if it's positive or negative. You kind of know they go through the said motions till you get till you get eggs. You know, and
you guys have a ultrasound over there, right? Forrest.
Yeah, and for us, it's about, you know, like with the emeralds, especially being something
it's a little
new.
bit more important in comparison with
We
python.
want to know 2 to 3 years worth of data, what time of the year we're seeing those animals
build follicular growth. Yeah, I mean, of course,
and we don't want to catch them when those follicles are going down, because that can be something that causes dystocia, egg binding.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of reproductive issues is when you breed them at the wrong time. So but
that's also something that, you know, looking back may have been the reason why I had issues with losing animals. You know what I mean? Maybe that's, you know, not fully taking into accountability, but I mean, I can tell you one way or another, you know, those things happen regardless. You know, if I had access to an ultrasound, I think those things, because I've talked to enough people that have been doing this that can tell me, okay, it's not just me that this is happening to. This is happening to other people. And what I mean by that is breeding these locality animals isn't as easy as it is breeding the mainlands. Breeding mainland reticulated pythons in comparison to breeding pure localities, whether if you're breeding pure to pure or breeding morph into pure crosses, is a whole different ballgame. I truly feel like it's not as easy. And the thing,
generations captive bred in though, right? I mean, like that female you're talking about, she was wild caught. So the fact that did she come in gravid?
No, she came in at probably maybe 3 foot and was established by someone who passed along, you know, put in different hands, and you know, just was able to snag her, and I was the last person to put hands on that snake.
To reproduce from a female wild caught python, according to the Barkers, who have done it more than anybody in the world, it's even a ball python, a wild caught adult female ball python ripped out of the wild and brought in. I mean, the success rate is dismal. Well,
a lot of these animals weren't full adults. They were, you know, they were probably 2-3 years old, and, you know, they had age on them. Yeah, so they were they were able to establish in captivity in comparison to being a full adult. I have never gotten a full wild caught 8-foot female, you know, directly plucked from the wild as an adult. Everything that I had wild caught was all stuff that was brought in at a smaller age and was acclimated to captivity.
Yeah,
and made it a much better captive in comparison to I can honestly say I've never had a female that was plucked as an adult from the wild and bred for me.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, most of the stuff we have is from animals that came in gravid or from babies they found in the wild. But you know, there's been a lot of really cool morphs that were found as adults, and
never did anything. Whether it be chondros, whether it be retics, whether it be Burmese pythons or ball pythons and boas, how many different stuff has popped around that has never done, you know, that never saw the light of day ever again, besides that one particular animal.
Yep, exactly. And luckily, a lot of the collectors and stuff over there have now gotten a lot more skilled to where they can find babies. And
that must be that's such a different level of like, we're like what we do as far as like breeding things in a captive setting. Imagine being able to just know the different time of the year. Like, you go to this part of the island, there's these particular snakes that you find, or these particular lizards. Like, that's amazing to just have that stuff and have access to that stuff in your backyard, essentially.
Well, and I can tell you, you know, I went over there to that reptile show and contest in Indonesia, and seeing some of the retics these guys had there were
they just shit on us in comparison, like as far as morphs and the different locale. But it's funny because like over there, they don't care about the locality stuff. I can say that that's changed a little bit more as time has gone. You know, the market has focused more on locality stuff. But prior to that, a main focus, like all those guys, you know, like all the bigger breeders here, they're not really selling to the general public in the United States. They sell a small percentage, but a lot of their stuff is all being exported to other countries that still have a desire for these morphs that get very large, but in their essence, keeping a white. Imagine, like, you know, I mean, Forrest, for your example, like you, I know you're still looking for a larger snake to keep in your collection. It's just something amazing about having a large, colorful snake as a pet. It's a showpiece item in a way to these people. I mean, you know, and those are the people that are really buying that stuff from a lot of these larger breeders. But
I had a friend early on in retics, Joe Hank, and he had a big adult Sulawesi, or Sulawesi, however you say it.
Yeah, everyone has their own.
Incredible. I mean, it moved around so much, and it's had such beautiful pattern and color, and it was a huge retic. It had to be 17 plus feet.
Missoula's they're definitely up there as far as the bigger snakes. But going back to them, yeah, they don't really care so much about the locality stuff, you know, till recently. I can definitely say that's for a lot of people. That doesn't matter anywhere where you are in the world. You know, the focus of locality based retics has definitely grown in popularity, but for a large number of years it was the morphs. And I mean, I'm sure for a while that was the ball python. That was the ball python of the reptile industry, which was the mainland reticulated python morphs. You know, there was just so much variability between one snake, and the idea of having those snakes, but I can only keep a certain number of them. So the idea of being able to make snakes that I was obsessed about, because I still love morphs. I love locality animals, but morphs are what caught my attention. I mean, can't you guys say, like, you don't remember walking around and seeing a snake, you're like, whoa, what is that? You know, and 9 times out of 10, it's usually a morph.
But remember, like, there's people out there that, you know, kind of misleading others and selling morphs, saying that they're super dwarves. And remember, that's
I want to get into that in a little bit. Like, I mean, sorry, just like transitioning to like from one. I'm kind of like getting sidetracked with what we're talking about, but as far as just the over there in Indo, where their main focus, where they have these animals and they'd rather just keep the morphs. It's kind of funny how us now, we just want all the locality stuff, and unfortunately we can't have access to that. But I mean, it's definitely interesting to see where the transition has changed from the morphs to the locality animals. And I think animals, just in general, the animal markets come in fads, whether if it's something that's going to stay long-term or not. Just the interest of stuff comes and goes, you know, like, I mean, you know, for a long time, nobody cared about Abronia. You know, I could definitely say you're a large contributing factor of, like, I hear more people come up to us at our shows, you know, because, like, I'm fortunate enough, like, when I don't do the shows for my snakes so much, which is pretty much just Tinley, that's really the only show that I actually do that I vend at. And other than that, all the other shows, I'm just helping out. And how many people come up to us, because John has a large percentage of lizards on his table, that they're asking for Abronia. And I used to never hear about that. You know, I can honestly say, like, I hear your name pop up every now and again, and it's just like, I'm not even like talking.
Started the
you know,
Eve.
Yeah, it's just something that, you know, you can definitely, and that's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? The fact that you've helped build an interest into these animals that need pretty much popularity, but in essence not to be kept, more or less to preserve.
Yeah.
You know,
like somebody like Garrett, you know, I mean, just the impact he's had on.
If it wasn't for Garrett,
one of the most incredible marketing and educational guys out there. I mean, the fact that he was able to get, I mean,
he collaborated
all the time. You can't go to a reptile show and talk to a newer keeper, and one of the things on their list is a super dwarf from Garrett. I mean,
now, yeah. I mean, well, Garrett, I can honestly say, has, like, paved the way for the market itself. Like, super dwarfs weren't 3 years ago. Super dwarfs were not where they are now. You know what I mean? And Garrett is literally the only contributing factor to that. Being to where that market is, because the thing is, I give Garrett shit about this all the time. I told him, I was like, dude, I remember when pure Calitos were $500. It's because of you. It's because of you now. They're $2,500. You know what I mean? The guys that I used to be able to get these snakes from for practically nothing, I have to pay now for it. And I'm like, it sucks, but it's awesome at the same time. The fact that people are that interested in them, that allows the market to be built that highly around them. You know, like, in my mindset, they're still just a normal reticulated python. They just happen to stay smaller, and that's the one thing I like about them. I just love the size, but also they just have so much variability in patterns. So crossing into what I was saying before about the morphs and just finding a middle ground of kind of I was like, how can I do both? You know, keep a lot of snakes, but also do something that I want to with the snakes that I want to keep. And retics were the snake that I was definitely most passionate about. So it kind of came the idea once I realized that super dwarfs were like a real thing and actually available. I was like, this is what I'm going to focus on. And I want to focus on breeding mainland morphs that I'm very excited about and breeding them into these locality-based animals, on making them smaller, because smaller snakes means more for me to keep. And that was really my end goal when I first started doing this. And it's still an end goal now, just keeping as many snakes as I can that are produced by me. But as far as that, yeah, that's kind of where like the idea came from and kind of where everything really, really started. And the idea was to make a snake that I was really passionate about was a phantom, a phantom.
Yeah.
That was the snake for me that I saw it. And I mean, it's cool. It was allelic with OGS, and the fact that you're able to make a white snake. I don't even like cows, to be honest with you. I like phantoms just by themselves.
Oh man, the cows are cool.
The cows look like just a white snake that have poop on them. If I want to look at a snake I could just look at my other snakes.
The way looking at it, it's more like pigeon poop, by the way.
Pigeon poop, yeah, exactly. My snakes do that on a regular basis. I don't need a cow. I don't need to pay a bunch of money to have a snake that looks like it's covered in shit. You know, they do that every other day.
I'm just kidding.
So, but anyways, yeah, the idea.
Okay, so you take one of your pure super dwarf animals and then you breed it into a mainland morph. How many generations does it take for you to get that animal down to the super dwarf size? So
this is how it started. Was the idea was to make the end goal that I had pictured when I started collecting animals was I wanted to breed phantom into super dwarf, and it was actually already done before I had already done it. So I was like, okay, I want to do it as well, but I also want to make it one generation higher, just because I think that the more locality blood that you have into it, just the cooler the animal is going to look. And you're also just making it you're just thinning down the bloodline too. So you're just making an animal that's just smaller. So you're making an animal that's more refined and smaller. Like, what more could you want? Because it just allows me to keep more of them. And that was really just my end goal. So it had already been done. So it wasn't the idea of making a world's first snake. That was never really, like, this is a snake that at the time that people were generally focused on it. I was not the only one with this, even though I had spent decent money to invest in that project. There was so many people with it. I just wanted to make more phantoms.
Yeah.
That was really the idea of my project. And if it wasn't for that idea of that project, I would not be where I'm at now with all my other projects. It was just the idea of that, and then building off those and getting those animals, and slowly producing animals on my own, and then being able to, sell some of those animals to invest in other animals that obviously led to different projects. But the phantom was the project for me.
How many generations does it take until you basically have a phantom that is a super dwarf? There's only
the first breeding that was done was a phantom to a super dwarf to make 50% super dwarf phantoms. That animal is 50% mainland and 50% locality blood of whatever animal that was bred to.
Yeah,
I happened to do to Kalatoa. That was the first generation that I focused on, was breeding a phantom to a pure Kalatoa and using one of those babies to run back to another pure super dwarf, which created a 75% version, a 75% phantom. And like I said,
repeated that it would be
after that, which is where I just got to, just past 87 and a half. So, but like to again. And then we go again, and then we go to 91, like 91.2, like
one more time.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
F5, F6, you morph a recessive or codominant.
This is a codominant morph bred. Yeah. So 50%, in essence, 50% of the babies are going to be what the father is.
Yep.
So it was the idea of making. So the first time that I did the first time I made the first original ones, there was only 4 eggs. There was only one baby. Yeah, one baby. Well, there was 2, but then the other one died later on. But I had one baby, and that kind of built the founding groups and started. And there was a long period of time where I was only getting single-digit clutches, and or I would get a double-digit clutch, like 11 eggs, and eggs would just start to go bad, and I would just end up. Or I remember in the first, real first time, besides the first clutch that had pretty much got killed, I remember the second clutch I did, I cut eggs early. I had babies die because of it, because I got too excited, and I thought, just because for one particular female that her baby is hatched on day 75, all the other ones were going to hatch out on day 75, and I cut the egg, you know what I mean? And I've messed up babies. I'm open to say that. I mean, I think everyone has made mistakes in the process of breeding that, trust me, they'll never forget, that because it either cost them an animal or they did something that, could have been done differently, that, obviously made the mistakes that they did coming to that point.
How you grow. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. But that stuff, he teaches you, and you'll never forget it. I'll never forget securing my thermostat. I meant my thermostat probe. After that one time, having that experience is seeing those babies fried the next day because of our thermos. You know, like that was
The Helix, right?
It was a I think it was a Helix. And
the biggest thing to tell people that everybody does is you end up accidentally plugging your fan into the thermostat and then the heat element directly, because the fan.
I've never done that one, but oh my god, yeah.
People do that. That's when you gotta.
You done that before, Forrest?
What's that?
Does that happen to you?
Not with eggs, but for isolation for quarantine, I'd put animals in bigger incubators, and I made a mistake.
And
Sometimes, like, I mean, I remember hearing like some of the people would tell me, "Oh, if you have a stuck shed, you know, like a real bad shed, put them in the incubator, and you end up making it worse."
Yeah, well, if you do it right, you shouldn't.
Yeah, you shouldn't, but it's just
yeah. If you put them on damp paper towels and then you have it in
an incubator.
not in an incubator. You don't need to do that.
No, I personally haven't really.
And isolate. Basically, I think incubators you can make into kind of like little mini quarantine or isolation chambers. So if you've got an animal with,
if you have them set up right, if you're not, you're literally just creating a humid box with just with just zero, just the condensation buildup, and it's just the same moldy air, So I think having proper ventilation is key.
A ventilated tub. But if they've got a stuck shed, making a humid, stagnant box for a day or two, I mean, that's why, like in a lot of our enclosures, we've got little boxes with sphagnum in there that's damp.
Well, you live also in a climate like me where we get such different weather throughout the time of the year. I mean, it also helps for breeding, but also when it comes to the essential care of the animals, it definitely has a negative effect if you're not on top of it, because the cages dry out quicker, you know what I mean? Just less humidity in the said rooms. It's just, which causes issues, which could lead to respiratory infections, could lead to stuck sheds, could lead to, a whole bunch of other issues that come along with it. So, it's fortunate enough that we have the cold weather to help with breeding standpoint, because it does, having the different dynamic pressures to just naturally fluctuate by itself. That's the only good thing about living in the climates that we do. Besides that, everything else just becomes a more of a challenge as far as a keeper, because you have to pay attention to your hot spots. You have to pay attention to your humidity. You just have to be on top of it a little bit more in comparison to where you're in a climate where it stays almost the same all year round.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
there's in like, going to the stagnant box, it's like there's a reason why some people can leave their babies in the incubator for a week, and they don't get respiratory. It's actually a pretty good environment for.
You just, like I said, you just have to have it set up properly, and if you don't, it can also have a negative effect. So
yep,
definitely,
especially if you don't have fail safes and thermostats set up right and all that kind of stuff. It's it can be pretty.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people fail to realize, where you'll invest X amount of dollars into a snake, but you won't invest X amount of dollars into proper equipment, and I'm still at that point where I'm focusing more on just getting better caging and better equipment at this point, better than getting a higher end animal, because at the end of the day, I'd rather save. I mean, that's part of growing just as a keeper, where you realize you don't need to focus on just having everything and anything, where it's just focusing on what you have and being able to be the best keeper you can possible for that animal. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day.
At the investment level, it's like with your incubator, you should be running a herpstat that's rated for that incubator, and then you should have a specific Honda generator, the only generator that runs smooth enough,
especially
that the herpstat is, and then you need an auto transfer switch. So those are all things that somebody would spend on one investment snake. That setup right there could save your whole collection. And
I agree. I have a generator and I have good thermostats, but I don't know if I don't have the switch. I'm still, like I said, I'm getting there. Baby steps.
Yeah, and you can get away with it for a minute, but if you're out for a week or two, the Hondas are the only ones that run smooth enough to not.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where if something does happen, we don't lose power for more. I'm not losing power for weeks.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. But I mean, I do have a generator if emergencies like that do happen. But also, the nice thing is where I live, I also have my electric doesn't run on my heat doesn't run on electric. It runs on oil. So even if the power goes out, I still have hot water. I still have I still have heat, so I can put all the animals in a if it came to it, you know what I mean? And I have to put something, animals in a in a space, I could put them either in a bathroom, my spare bathroom, and have the heat cranked up to 80 degrees, and it's condensed enough to where just to get by, and but that happens so few and far in between. But I think being ready for it, especially for us where you're at, where I'm in a more suburb area where, it's like suburb city like, but in comparison to where you're at, if you have something happen, you are shit out of luck for God. You are at the mercy of them.
But we have our whole facility now.
No, of course, but it's built around it. But imagine if you didn't. You know what I mean? Imagine if you didn't have everything that you have to have your facility running at the standard of what it is now.
Yep. Yeah, and we went through it, man. We've had it go down before we had that stuff, and have to go rent generators and run and get, space heaters and this and that.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like, especially when like think about people that, when you're doing this on a breeding standpoint financially, to where like this is how you make a living. I mean, I go back and forth with this. Like I work certain times of the year more than I have to, but definitely when snakes, I'm fortunate enough now to be in a position to where like I don't need to work, especially when snake season is in full effect. When babies are popping around, like I don't need to work my regular job. I don't have to. And I eventually want it to be work, eventually be full-time, obviously, but if it happens, it happens. If not, it's not. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just going to keep the snakes, but it's cool that, obviously if it wasn't for people like Garrett to push the market where it's at, would allow me to be able to do that. If not, I'd be the same typical grind like a lot of people do, which is work their full-time job and then whatever else they have, and then go take care of a full-time collection, in comparison to where I can not have to go to work and I can just focus on my animals and just making that better and growing that further and further every year, to where, who knows, maybe one day I can never have to go back to work. But
that's
the goal. That's the goal. That's just the dream. It's just a daydream right now. But I mean, I live that daydream a little bit more and more every year. And this is definitely a breakthrough year. I'm truly thankful for everyone that that have just gotten animals for me and just pushed, just allow me to just like believing just in what I do pretty much, and just seeing that my hard work is actually being paid off, and those first projects, like coming back to the Phantom, like if it wasn't for those projects and those ideas, like I wouldn't be here, like, and having those people that I talked about earlier that just really guided me in a way to where I wasn't just bouncing around anymore. I'd finally settled in and I was like, okay, I found something I'm genuinely passionate about and I want to continue to push this to the next level, and having that guidance to do so and being around the animals that kept me going pretty much. I wasn't just around, any old collection, like these were high-end animals. So it was just like, whoa, like I'm in pretty much exclusive company, and that's how I felt, and those animals really kind of made me realize, and it also humbled me because it made me realize like what I want to do, and whether if it's for making a lot of money or whether if it's making the next world's first morph, for whatever the case may be, you know what I mean? I feel like you should do it because you want to do it. And whether if you're investing, every dollar you ever had into a project, or you're just doing it to try to get rich off of it, you have to have an end goal, but for me, it's just making more snakes that I want to keep. And I think if you're not okay with keeping at least half your babies from every clutch you produce, you shouldn't be breeding that snake, or shouldn't be breeding that said animal. That's how I look at it. Like, without a doubt, like if you're not okay with keeping the stuff you're producing, don't breed at all. It's why do it? Why add more to an already oversaturated market, whether if it be retics, whether if it's ball pythons? Why are you going to produce another animal just for the sake of producing another animal? To what? Do you have to feed and keep and then have it sit around for a year at your house just to maybe sell it to someone else, or to wholesale it off for it to just be passed around and passed around and passed around? I mean, I love knowing the animals that I produce are going to people that are going to keep them and eventually have it, whether if they're keeping it as a pet or whether if they're making that investment animal, just knowing that that animal is going to get properly taken care of is my main focus. Like for instance, like for Michael, like he has an animal for me, and like I get more updates probably from him than anybody else. And I love that. You know what I mean? I love when people send me pictures of animals that I produce, because it's just such a different feeling in comparison to seeing a snake that, oh, you sold and you regret selling it, as we're like, oh man, I saw that snake come out of the egg and I made it for free, and I still let it leave. You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. I definitely I think once it gets to the point where you're producing enough animals, or you see enough cool animals, you like kind of have to pick and choose. Like, okay, what am I going to keep for the sake of keeping, or if I'm just keeping this just to want it? You know, it's like, what is your end goal with that initial project?
Right.
And I think that's super important too. Is just like I said, the time that you invest, you're never going to get that back. You know, you make money. You know, you lose money, you make money, but as far as time, you know, you can't make that back.
Yeah, as a breeder, I mean, I think we need to start seeing our community act more like dog breeders and stuff, where it's like you're trying to make a better, healthier animal.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to make a world's first. I'm literally trying to make a snake that the market for is a $300 to $400 snake, but I just want to keep making it better and better and better and more refined, because you know why? I just like the way it looks so much. I don't care where the market's at for it. But you know what? Me doing that alone has allowed me to create my own market for a snake that essentially people don't care about. But you know what? I've put so much effort and emphasis on why these snakes are cool. It has pretty much separated them from their own initial market that they're revolved around itself.
Yep.
So I think, you know, when you dedicate your time and you believe in it enough, whatever it may be, and you see it through, it'll work, you know, whether if it's to sell it, to get recognition, whatever it may be, you know what I mean? Like, you put the time and effort into it, it'll all come into play.
Let me ask you this, Andrew. If like, let's say I'm like, yo, I'm trying to get into super dwarfs, right? And you were trying to give a legit recommendation, you know, other than yourself. Like, who are like 3 people, if you can name 3 people that you feel comfortable, you know?
That's a pretty easy one. Obviously, besides Garrett,
Go ahead.
Eric Lee, without a doubt, is probably like one of the more.
Does he have he doesn't have an Instagram, right?
Eric Lee does have an Instagram. I believe it's Eric Lee Fit. He doesn't. He's been posting more snake stuff, but Eric is definitely right up there. Like he even though it's all friendly competition, he gives me a run for my money. Like with anything that dude does, he's just on such a different level of stuff. It's so cool. And he's like me. He just wants to make more snakes that he wants. And that's what it's all about. You know, we're just so greedy with our snakes that we just want to finally make enough that we can trade our snakes. That's it. You know what I mean? That's exactly. like, I'm like, hey, let me give you this snake for this snake because I don't care about the money. I just want your snake.
Yeah.
You know, that's really it. And that's all I want.
If snakes become gold, that's when you're like, fuck it.
Yeah. When no dollar amount could even replace to be like, okay, nah, having that snake will, you know, makes it worth it though. But Eric Lee, without a doubt, Eric has definitely been one of those dudes that even when I first started really doing this, you know, he was always just very genuine with me, and kind of he's seen a lot of my projects, like where I would just talk about stuff. Because I'll definitely say this: how many people that you guys know, you know, like with any project, you know, they tell you everyone that you know that keeps reptiles has a project. But how many of those people that have those projects fulfill those projects to fulfillment, like to complete fulfillment?
Have credentials.
Very few. Like Marshall Mendez is somebody I've always looked up to.
But how many people in comparison are like Marshall Mendez? There's so few and far in between. You know what I mean? Like there's so many people that have gotten projects that have fallen out. I mean, like I said, I'm a perfect example of it. When I first started, like I said, I had no idea. These were all projects, but I didn't fulfill any of them because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then when I finally found it, it definitely was. You know, like I will always see myself keeping reticulated pythons. You know, as long as I physically can keep them, I will always have them. They're a snake that has really just
part of me, man. I love
their part. Yeah, exactly. They're part of me. Like without a doubt.
Like Novi's saying, I think like I hate looking at it like a project, or when people say the hobby, it's like this is a living being in my collection. I want to have a life plan to keep it forever. You know, like
or as long as you possibly can. You know, like every snake that I decide to keep at this point is long term. I don't want to have that snake leave. You know what I mean? If I'm keeping it and investing my time and energy into it, I want this snake to be here from beginning to end. Whether if I'm hatching it or whether if it's coming from someone that I trust, you know what I mean? Like I want them to know that, hey, you're putting this animal in my hands, and I'm going to take the best possible care that I can. And snakes don't really require much. I always find it funny when people ask me, is it hard to keep a snake? I'm like, if you can keep a dog or a cat alive, you can keep a snake alive, but that also doesn't mean you should have one.
I feel like you need to be able to keep a plant alive to be able to fucking own anything living first.
I've never been able to keep plants alive, so.
Well, I'm just saying, it keeps anything living, right? I mean, it's better to fucking kill a plant than an actual animal.
Is it?
Is it? Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it's right at the same
Plants
level.
are pain too, bro.
Yeah.
The fuck's wrong with you?
But dude, if you look at plants, a whole different topic. And MJ, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Just looking down at just the world below us, just at your feet, whether if it's plants, bugs, it's a whole nother world. Like it's unlike whoever says aliens aren't real have never looked at the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like real shit. Like look at the ground and look around you. There's things there that aren't from this planet. I'd have to say so.
I mean,
and at your place, there's fucking crickets and fucking tokay geckos running around.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, het melanistic tokays running around. But going back to what you said, MJ, as far as people that I would recommend, John Cashman. John Cashman's another super. I'm actually wearing his shirt right now, Cashman Reptiles. John's a super low key dude that honestly has some of the best stuff out there and doesn't even talk about it, without a doubt. Who else? Besides Garrett, I mean, Rodney Bolich, he doesn't keep so much. Rodney is definitely like, you know.
That's Ternate, dude. He has the fucking most fierest Ternates out there right now.
Rodney has probably worked with more locality retics, and I'm fortunate enough to have him close enough. And also someone I can call a close friend of mine, you know, that has just pretty much took me under his wing and knew that like I had the same interest of stuff, and pretty much we just kind of geek out over the same things. And even though he doesn't keep super rare retics anymore, his main focus is with a different group. I mean, they haven't been recognized by science to be classified as their own species, but you know, they're found the Ternate Island reticulated pythons that he is working with are unlike anything else I've worked with, and they're honestly right up there with my favorite snakes that I'm currently working with at this moment. You guys saw them when I brought them. I mean, it's just like I geek out over the different locality stuff. Like the super dwarf stuff is cool, but I've seen enough of it to where it's like when I see the other stuff, if I could keep any group, reticulated pythons are also so amazing too because they're found. No other snake species is found as far of a range as far as reticulated pythons go.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible, and the fact that everywhere you find them, they're all different in their own particular way.
Yep.
So for me, if I had to pick a group of one group of reticulated pythons from a region of where they come from, it would have to be anything from the Philippines.
Yeah.
The stuff in the Philippines is still to this day, like the ternates are the closest thing, even though they don't come from essentially the Philippines. I wish I could show you the different snakes because they all bite. But
where do Karampa or whatever, are they in the
Karampa? That's part of the Christmas Islands where true Sutrii and Jampianus are found, where you have Salar Islands, Kalatoa, Madu, Karampa. It's all in that chain of islands. As where Ternate is off of Indonesia, and and then the other localities I'm working with is Mindanao, Philippines. That's like I said, those are my favorite at the moment. The Philippines stuff. We just can't get in any more of it, and that's the stuff I truly geek out over about. I mean,
well, that's like looking at the impact Rodney had by having that interest early on, and then.
But that's the thing, nobody cared for years. Rodney was bringing in locality after locality, and nobody gave two shits about it. The minute there was a market behind it and people could make money, all of a sudden, everyone and their cousin became a locality advocate.
Yeah,
and then it's too late. I mean, thank God there was a couple of you guys that
got serious about it. And if it wasn't for, even till to this day, some of Rodney's original Kalatoa stuff is still, like, in my opinion, one of the better looking stuff out there. And there's not much that replicates to it. And the fact that, like, we can't even, like, some of that stuff just died and disappeared is like is a loss to just for snake keeping in general. It's just so unfortunate. But for him to be able to focus and rebuild a whole market around a snake that he had pretty much was the only person that was genuine enough to buy the groups when he got the chance offered them and focus, and he's like, listen, I'm just going to give up on everything else and I'm going to focus on this said snake. And
that had now, an impact on conservation of those animals and cats.
Rodney has more information on egg data, and
dude's
just
fucking smart.
The dude's a nerd about when it comes to this stuff, and even when he's wrong, he's right.
He's a verbal test,
Rodney's one of those dudes. He's so hard headed, and I love him, but he's like one of those people that he's just like, nah, it's this way. It's only this way, and I give him shit for it, but he's super smart, and Rodney's definitely like
he's ghosting him.
I have so much to be thankful for him, and I mean, Rodney's a dick to most people, but he was always very, very nice to me, and has definitely paved the way for me. Like I said, just having those people really, allowed me to be that next level of a keeper. If it wasn't for being around these people, I would not be able to.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Michael?
That's a huge stepping stone for you, bro.
Oh yeah, and going back to what we were saying, like with knowing Garrett, like I said, I grew up watching Garrett's videos. Like I saw Garrett's videos on YouTube, and that dude inspired me to want to do the stuff that I'm doing now. So to have him I remember when Garrett reached out to me, and he told me that he was watching the stuff that I was doing. Like that was like one of the very few times where I was like, oh, like I had like an oh shit moment, because I was like, someone that I look up to is paying attention to what I'm doing. So I'm obviously doing something right.
Yeah.
And, to be working with some of these guys, on projects ourselves, like me and Garrett just had a clutch just happen. So going back to the Phantom stuff, we finally are at the 3rd generation, and it has taken over 5 years to get to this point. I could actually show you one of the babies right now, because these babies just hatched out within the past 2 days. These are 3rd generation. And you want to know the craziest part about this? There was 9 babies.
It's the size of a ball python.
9 babies. This is the first. I mean, there's more than one, but this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that this percentage has ever been made. Even though it's just a Phantom.
What percentage?
This is 87.5% super dwarf. What that means is pretty much I bred a mainland morph to a pure super dwarf female, bred a baby from that back to another pure super dwarf female, and bred another baby from that back to another pure. But if you guys knew, I don't know how many people are really watching this that have had experience with breeding these snakes, realize what comes along with keeping these snakes. Keeping locality reticulated pythons on a breeding standpoint is probably the closest thing I could probably relate to is probably like keeping a boreals. It's just heartbreaking when it comes to breeding. It's just stuff goes. You get more stuff going wrong than you do right, and people like that will get lucky. Will get 1 or 2 years where they're like, oh man, I got this figured out. And the thing is, like, I didn't have that. Like, it wasn't until the first couple years after I started breeding, I started actually seeing like consistency. For the first beginning of it, it was just me getting shit on after 1 year after another, and I was just like, man, why do I keep doing this to myself? Because it's just setting myself up for heartbreak. Like me investing time and money that, like, at the time, like working whatever I could, being, in high school to come up with whatever money, because I didn't have my parents. I didn't want to ask my parents were cool enough. Well, my mom was cool enough because I lived with my mom, and she was cool enough to let me do it at the time. And she said, you can do it, but I'm not getting involved with it. So that meant I had to come up with the money for everything for this, right. So I had to do whatever means as far as like, and thankfully for Craigslist, growing up, that was a major come up. But other than that, it was like, working part-time jobs and just saving every dollar that I could to just invest back into these snakes.
Yeah.
And just dedicating every single, like just doing anything I could to just come up with any extra means of extra cash to just get these, to try to come up with the money to build these projects and fulfill them. And like I said, till I started actually producing animals and was able to use either trading animals or just getting recognition enough to where people would work with me, just like listen, they're like, I know you don't have all the money for it, but hey, like just take this. I know you're good for it. You know what I mean? Like people, you know what I mean? Like that's I don't do that shit. You know what I mean? Like there's very few people like that I'd be like, here, take this animal, and you haven't put $1 down for it, but I trust you enough that you're going to pay me.
Yeah, bro.
And having people like that just made, even though I had negative experiences with the hobby, stuff like that really made me realize, I was like, wow, dude, there are like some amazing people that, like they just want to see other people succeed. This is literally like, for example, like I want to do a Bronia, you know what I mean? And I want to do that specifically for me, just because I think they're so cool. And seeing someone like you who geeks out over something like, for example, there's very few people, well, not so much now because locality retics are what's in, but before there was very few people that were really interested in it. So to see people that just doesn't matter where the market is or what it is, they're just that excited for one specific group of animals is just so refreshing, in my opinion. I just love seeing that, just seeing that interest and passion for, regardless of what the market or the interest is of that said animal. It's just having a love and wanting to just fulfill that to the largest scale possible. And whether if that's breeding, whether if it's conservation, whatever it is, just just that fulfillment alone is.
I think one thing we got to tell ourselves too with these frustrations with like with the arboreals and the super dwarfs and stuff like that is one thing we're not looking at or we're not taking into account is how we're breeding them for the first or second time and we're having failures or we're not having, we're getting slugs, we're having different
females getting egg bound, females getting and the issues that I've had with breeding them, it's either I'll kind of put it like to this, because most people I feel won't talk about it. The negative experience that I've had breeding, obviously the worst thing that happened has been losing the female, and that's obviously been a large portion of it. And that's the worst part. But I've had the issues that I've had is just females they'll either do this, they'll either breed perfectly and they'll always be good breeders, and you'll never have an issue with them. Or you'll get one that gives you, they'll either do two things. They'll either never be good breeders. They'll always spit out eggs. They'll always get the eggs out of them, but they'll have fertility issues.
Yeah.
Or you'll get a female that she'll get one duck of eggs out and then hold on to the other. So she doesn't essentially make the best breeder. So she'll give you half a clutch of eggs and get egg bound with the other half and slowly get them out.
In dog breeding or whatever, they quickly and ethically get rid of those animals. I mean, looking at the rat colony, what percentage of females, and we've tested it out to make sure they never produce, but what percentage of those ones that get to week 4 after pregnancy never produce?
Almost all of them.
I know, but how many out of 50 in each cage? How many?
I mean, maybe 5.
Yeah, maybe 5 females out of 50 do not reproduce. Female rats, like they just do not reproduce, and they're not going to reproduce no matter how. So 5, out of 50, what is that? 2.5% have fertility issues. Yeah. So, if you look at that at a clutch of 10, you're probably going to get a female or two that's not, and only 5 females. You have a good chance that maybe there's a female in there that's just not going to have a good chance at reproduction. So it's that in there. So you might just have, that's an animal that needs weeded out, but it's also patience, in crocodilians and monitor lizards. A lot of times the first or second clutch, they're always
with monitors. Definitely the first clutch almost certainly is always slugs.
That's how crocodiles are.
Yeah,
too. You're not. Yeah. And it can be 2, 3, 4 years before you get good ones.
And it really just depends on how your cycle and also their environment of where they're comfortable with laying, and that all plays to different factors as well. It's just like, because sometimes females can be fertile, but they don't like their nesting option, and they're holding on to the eggs for such a long period of time that the eggs just go bad inside of them. But they're still spitting them out because they can't hold them in any longer. But that's how you end up with issues with females just either getting egg bound or just something happening where it ends up causing egg binding or something, that will have a negative issue. You were
real adamant on with me early on is you're like, dude, you can't make the nesting area once they're gravid. It's got to be there long before.
Way prior, yeah, because you're gonna kill them. You know what I mean? Like a female that isn't comfortable and having eggs in, you're setting yourself up for disaster.
And in breeding, we move our animals around the room or into a new building, or that we do it all the time. That resets the clock.
Oh, so for sure. Moving an animal from, for example, like getting. It's always funny, like when people say you have to let an animal settle in for 2-3 years before breeding. That's bullshit. I think you get an animal in, that one change alone of just different pressures, different temperature, different humidity is enough to set it. If that animal is healthy enough to breed, will set it alone to where that
go either way for male.
It can go either way. It could, but
reset that. You could cause trauma or stress, and they do need a while to settle in, or they might never even.
It varies animal to animal.
Yep.
You can't say that for what works for one animal is going to work for the other.
No.
And as we're like for like hatching out monitor lizard eggs, like for what works for other keepers doesn't work. For example, like using a sim container to keepers that I talk to that are out west in comparison to keepers that are on the East Coast. And since us having different humidity levels have an effect on our eggs hatching, and and people blame John for it, but I think it also has to do with where you're keeping your eggs. You know what I mean? Keeping them in a basement to where that keeps the most amount of moisture. Just different settings alone. Just because it works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else.
Yeah. There's that experience you have to learn hands-on, just like back in the day making your perlite vermiculite mixture, and you've got to know how to get it to clump.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And with this, John's made it so much easier, but still,
I still have issues, like I still have like with catching out monitors, it's a way different, I mean, I haven't even passed. I still haven't even passed like more than maybe a dozen eggs, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know what I mean? Like out of the years I've been keeping them, and all of them have been dwarf monitors.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's one of those things that
for me is like, it's just such a dream. Like
I've gotten so many eggs in comparison to how many I've actually hatched. It's insane. And that's the same thing with snakes too. Like, how many eggs have you actually gotten that you've actually hatched? So, like I said, getting eggs for me doesn't excite
100%.
me. Getting eggs doesn't excite me.
Yeah,
getting babies hatch out of
I've lost almost all of them. I mean, it's just like I could care less. May as well throw them in the trash. Like it's
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things. But is there anything else? Is there any questions actually? Or I mean, I've kind of been like kind of going everywhere with our topics. But
you've been like a fucking loose pistol and shit. You've been like fucking like a Tommy gun.
No, yeah. Until this last bit apart, I feel like I finally kind of gained direction of what we were talking about.
What are you the most excited about producing this year?
Oh man, that's a tough one. This year is like I can say might be. I mean, I think for any snake keeper, every year is going to be. They want it to be the biggest year, but I would like to say this year might truly be it. I mean, I'm not saying as far as to where it's going to be the ultimate expansion of where AA Exotics is going to be. I think it's just as far as like a breeding standpoint of just producing, like finally having pretty much I've kind of expanded enough and be able to have enough animals to where, yes, I've had a lot of losses in the years doing this, but with the small successes that I've had, it has allowed me to go a lot further too. Like having just the few animals that I have been successfully able to breed, I've been able to use them to reproduce even better animals. This first clutch that I did with Garrett, it's crazy to think how many babies I actually have, like visual phantoms in comparison to how many it took, like in the years breeding them, how many I actually made. Like there was times where I'd make one, just the one, and the rest would be normals, or I'd make a few and they would just die in the incubator because something would happen. They get tangled up in the umbilical cord, or just some fucking freak accident happens that just, I lose them, or they come out and they just don't thrive. You know what I mean? So like this year made up for all of that as far as the phantoms go number wise. Yeah. But as far as the clutch I'm most excited for was actually the clutch I just got, which is for pure Calatoas. I finally hit a clutch of pures myself. I mean, because for a long time, sorry to cut you off, Michael, but for a long time, it's literally just been breeding morphs that I like, mainly just the phantoms, but I bred other stuff into different localities too. But that was the main project and started everything. Is finally, after having so much failures with a lot of stuff, I kind of realized I was like, all right, I can't be focusing so much on making morphs, because obviously whatever I'm doing is causing me to lose females. I'm making snakes, but I'm also losing snakes. So it's not equaling out. And how long it takes to get these snakes to breed to the point of from baby to breeding, it's so much time. You know what I mean? So when you lose a snake, it's just an asset to your collection. And whether if it's for, it's just genetic bloodlines, or just having those animals for just breeding, for whether if you're breeding them for morphs or whether if you're breeding them for locality specific purposes, you know what I mean? Losing any of those snakes is a loss. So whether if it's for the overall bloodline diversity, what's in the States, especially with us not being able to bring in anything anymore, it definitely has a huge damper on things now. So I was fortunate enough to actually hit a clutch of those. So if everything hatches, hopefully in 75 days from now, 70 days from now, it's already been a couple days. We'll hopefully have the first time of me ever breeding pures. So it's a very big, exciting moment for me, just because I'm gonna keep almost all of them.
Oh, that was my question. I was gonna say, if anybody's listening, can they hit you up and try to get on a list, and then
talk later?
There's
no list for me.
I
don't do lists anymore. I tell people I do lists, but it's more just like
mail for the email. So I'm confused here. Are we gonna talk later about this?
What's up? What's up, MJ?
I thought you had a mail for my female.
I do. Well, it's hopefully in hopes the idea is if I make the snake, I'm just going to send it to you. That's it. I'm just going to send you a snake and we'll split the babies. That's it. And knowing that baby came, knowing that both of those babies came for me is just
Ship it.
I just want to. I got to make it first.
All right, I have a question for you, Andrew.
What's up?
Are you gonna breed ball pythons in 2021?
2021 is probably the year for ball pythons.
Oh,
Right.
I'm ready. I'm trying to get some stuff. Anyone that's watching this that's a ball python guy that wants to get into some locality stuff, I'll have some stuff. But
Stop! Don't talk
I
to
told you I need leopard, clown. What else that I'm big on? Pied stuff. But for the most part, right now, the clown, any clown stuff. Like I said, I'm focusing on it. I don't know what I'm gonna make, but watch when I find my niche for my ball pythons. Whether if it's already been made 10 times over, mine's gonna be the best version of it. Whether if you think so or not, because I think it is, and that's all that matters.
What do you think of these crossbreeds? These Timor retic crossbreeds?
Well, they're in the same genus.
Look, Forrest just threw up.
They're in the same genus. Why not? You know what I mean? I think that's amazing. The fact that I mean, I'm not really for hybrids, but if it's in the same complex, why not?
Timors
It's captivity, dude. There's no rules.
They do.
You know what I mean? These snakes aren't going to be released in the wild. You know, why not? If you want to fucking make a shit snake, I mean, I don't think like those are, since they're in the same genus, I think they're just
snake.
I think those are genetically strong snakes. I think a Timor retic cross is a genetically strong snake for being a hybrid. For being they're in the same genus. How could they not be?
Yeah.
You know, you're breeding a ball python to a berm, it's completely different.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Does that? Like, I mean, you just got to be like the trashiest.
It's like
Bob Clark has done it. I mean, Bob Clark has done a lot of stuff.
Oh, what's the trashiest? Hold on. What's the trashiest?
You said a ball python berm cross.
Ridiculous.
God, are we still gonna be friends?
No, I don't care that much with smaller stuff, like with crocodilians and stuff, man. It just disgusts me, dude. It just disgusts me because there's already such a limited amount of effort we can put into putting these animals in captivity. So to do something like that, sometimes people just do it out of boredom. Yeah, I think it's like, honestly, I really want to know what all the tree monitors look like together, and I could see myself someday. I mean,
there's hybrids been done, Cordensis and McRae. Those have been done multiple times.
Yeah, they've done a few of them. Yeah,
they've done a few. Yeah. I mean, moving forward, I mean, like I eventually want to see your guys' facility to where you guys are producing, you know, monitors. I mean, you have the animals to do it. You have the animals to do it. I think you guys still need to make certain changes to the caging.
Yeah.
That's real. Like once that is the last thing. Your animals are established. You have the animals.
More hot spots, right?
I think you guys need to just more focus on building enclosures that just hold in better humidity and temperatures, having no openings other than maybe like a ventilation system. You know what I mean? To allow different just airflow, but having openings to where it allows humidity and heat to escape just creates such influctuation of temperatures to where it's just like, who knows that, you know, it may not work for what a particular female may need, you know, to breed.
Clean, like we almost never have stuck shed on our monitors though. Like,
and for all I know, it could be just as simple as adding more core. It's hard to say because your animals are so established. You know what I mean? Like your animals eat in front of you. You feed your animals mainly a bug-based diet, which is what they're eating in the wild.
Yeah.
You know, so, but you have everything, but there's something that obviously they're not getting that's creating them to produce, for them to produce. Right. Yeah. Because
I mean, we've got the black tree monitors are adults and yeah, we haven't had any success with them. The blues are just now up to size. Everything's really just getting to size. We raised them all from captive-born babies. So
yeah.
So we'll see, you know, I mean, we've got captive-born babies of every species. So
babies are the best way to do it because, you know, if you're going to work with anything that's being brought in, you know, it better be babies because it has its best chance of, you know, acclimating to captivity.
Yep.
So it's, I think you guys are headed in the right direction. I think, like I said, it's just niching, just fixing a couple things that are so minor that really will make the difference of actual production. And I think, you know, everything's a learning curve, you know, because as we're what you think may work or what you thought work doesn't, you know, and again, talking to other breeders, it's always interesting to see what their success is different in comparison to yours.
Yeah, and I mean, I just your knowledge base on that stuff on the Varanids and And
it's still, my knowledge is still so limited. You know what I mean? And a lot of this stuff is just from just personal experience, seeing them and working with them, but still never breeding them. It's just getting a better idea. And just, I think it, like how you said, wanting to make trips. I know this completely, you know, like we didn't talk about this, but you and I have talked about it on a personal level of wanting to do trips, you know, going to these places where these animals actually are and seeing, you know, how these animals thrive as a species in the wild, and seeing what us as keepers can do to fix our I think the idea of is to the best, pretty much what I'm trying to say is to best replicate the wild in a captive setting.
Yeah.
You know, but what we're, like I said, it's so hard to truly mimic that in a way that works for the animals, because what you're doing may not work. I'm getting lost for words. Pretty much what other breeders may be doing that may be working on the East Coast may not work for you if you being on the West Coast.
Yeah.
You know, and you guys may keeping them the exact same way. You guys may be feeding them the exact same diet, you know, temperatures and everything to the T. But there's obviously something that's not being met that's creating that much of a difference for these animals not to be breeding.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the kind of stuff I get obsessed with, is just the stuff that is, you know, like the crocodile monitors, like, you know, to chase that dream.
You can do it, man. I mean, you have the space. That's not an issue. You have the space. You just need the right animals. And I think starting off, you're in the right direction with having babies.
Yeah, I think we have 1.2 and they've all been raised from babies. So I mean,
sick, dude.
The problem is it's just getting good eggs.
Yep.
You can get eggs, but getting them to hatch, that's a whole that still has only been done. I think everyone I'm not aware of anyone that has done it.
And then
no, it's done. It's been done. I'm talking about consecutively.
Oh, back
most of the people that have done it has never been able to replicate it.
Only Honolulu Zoo.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm kind of out of the niche as far as what is still being.
What's that?
Say that name again.
Honolulu, the Honolulu Zoo in Hawaii.
Oh, it's a Honolulu. Oh no, I missed it. Honolulu Zoo in Hawaii.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
I think it was a number of years though. Like they did it once, and then they went a long number of years before they did it again. I mean, to even do it once, you know, regardless, that's a dream come true. But I mean, the guys over in Indos, the people that are farming them, I mean, they pretty much have established groups that get maybe 1 or 2 clutches a year. Allegedly, yeah. But the thing is, if these animals, I mean, don't get me wrong, I truly do believe that a lot of these animals are threatened in the wild, but they still, every single year, these fresh little babies happen to pop up. You know what I mean?
Me and MJ were told how that happens, huh, MJ?
What's that?
How they were finding babies in the wild, tree monitors and croc monitors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were told there's a secret behind it, and they're finding them little babies, man.
It's amazing.
Yep.
You know, but that's the thing. I'm okay with animals being taken from the wild, but if they're put in captive hands that are actually going to have any chance of success with them, you know, just bring them in to sell them is pointless. They should not be brought in for that reason.
But the people who are grabbing them don't give a fuck. They need the money.
Of course, because they have nothing to their name. Selling a $200 lizard is, you know, like, and you sell a couple of them is their yearly, you know, is how they survive and feed their family. I understand it, but it's also horrible.
There's a bright side to it. If you look at like blood pythons with Cameron Tepedlin from Bushmaster, he went into an area where they were skinning these animals in horrific ways, and he showed them a different option of bringing in gravid females, setting them up, letting them have their clutch, and then putting them back out there so they could do it the next year. They raised some of those animals for skins, and they were able to sell some of them into the trade for way better profits, and gave them a different way of doing it. So I think a lot of it's just like education and finding, better.
Not just bringing to bring them in to have an actual purpose behind it. You know, is just
why do they need to bring in? You know, how
many Savannah monitors are exported in every year? You know what I mean?
Like, why do we need any of those brought in? It's just,
and I think those are the animals that should be expensive. I don't think those should be $40 animals.
No,
those should be $400, $500 animals. You know why? Because they get big. They're super cool. You know what I mean? If you keep savanna monitors correctly, they are such a fun species. You know what I mean? They're a completely underground living. They're an underground living dwelling lizard.
Yeah, they're awesome.
It's just a shame that they're so oversaturated in the reptile trade that here and there they're still bred. They are bred in captivity. I know in the UK there's someone that breeds them at least like once a year. But there was a kid. He was a younger guy. He did them like 2-3 years, 2 or 3 times consecutively. And to just see a species like that, to where like there's a focus and an actual interest behind it, regardless of the dollar value behind it, is still cool. Because I think I would still to this day freak out. I know Andrew Llewellyn, as far as I know, and maybe Rob Frost are probably the only people that have really bred Niles and Nalcatis and Ornatus. And those are species that are brought in for $60. But they're so amazing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think a price value doesn't determine how cool an animal actually is. It's
just they need to lower the quotas on those, and then stuff that they ignorantly won't let come in. They need to have like some kind of lottery system or something to where, we can get a chance.
And the thing is, what's crazy? Because I think the concept of breeding Salvatore it has to be the same as breeding Niles. They're so similar. It's just different regions of where they're found. And with Salvatores, once you figure them out, dude, they're so they're so consistent. You know what I mean? You get clutches back to back to back.
Black dragons.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same thing with Niles. You set them up correctly, and you give them what they need in proper nesting and proper heating and a proper diet. I think reproducing any monitor species is capable. It's just giving them what they need, and a lot of the times more is less. It's like giving these animals what you think what they truly need may not be, because like, for example, like my dwarf monitors, like I keep them on Jurassic sand, 2 or 3 pieces of cork, a nest box, and a water bowl, and flat rocks. That's it.
Yeah, guys, if you need to use sand, Andrew's the one that brought it to my attention. You have
Jurassic sand for all the dwarf stuff. I love it. It's not. I mean, obviously, it isn't. Shout out to Clark Tucker. He's like my dwarf monitor expert. Who like that. That's like who I have all my questions from. Clark is just he's a nerd when it comes to his Odatra, and I love hearing him talk about it because he's just so passionate, and he just geeks out over it, and it always just brings my excitement back to where like. Where I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated because breeding Kingorum has been like the most hardest thing I've probably had to breed out of all the animals that I've kept and worked with. Like I've never gotten more eggs of a species and not hatched them. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything more depressing than waiting 110 days, 105 days. You see a full term baby and it's dead. And see, it gets to the point where you just, like I said, I've talked to MJ about this, like having emotions with certain things, especially when it comes to breeding reptiles, they don't mix because you'll just be so emotionally broke every time if you put just, you have to have a kind of like a blocker, and just being able to I
go into instant denial.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take the worst loss of my life. Like I remember saving up for a chondro for over a year.
And how much was that chondro?
$10,000.
Was it the Kofiau?
No, it was the Dark Knight.
Oh, okay.
Not the Dark Knight. It was Damian Black. He was like the blackest calico that ever lived. Chondro. And me and Cody were like paying payment plans on him for like a year, almost $10,000, and like he ended up dying. And it was just like, that's like it was like saving up and then $500 a month, for this long. And it's like I've had so many animals. I mean, I've lost 6 figures and that stuff, and I just instantly act like it just didn't happen. I'm just like, oh.
Yep, I just use it as a loss to the game, man. At this point, I don't even look at how much I've lost. I just look at what I've gained from it. Whether if it's a positive or a negative, I learned something from it.
Gain the experience.
Yeah, and I think experience is the greatest teacher there is. There's nothing more that time and just being around can teach you than a book or a classroom setting can never teach you.
It's the people, it's the friends, like
for sure,
sharing the knowledge, the just experiencing those animals every day.
Putting that information out there is key, but also, and I'm fully for sharing knowledge with people. But the thing is, like, are you actually listening to what I'm saying? Whether if like I ramble and I was everywhere with this podcast, but like speaking on one specific thing that I'm, focusing on, and like for me to take time out of my day to talk about it, it's just like, I expect you to listen, and whether if it's, cause like that's the thing, I can usually tell who's worth telling the information to in comparison to where it's like, I can give you the same vague answers, because I know this information I'm giving you, you're going to take every bit of that and run with it, and use it to hopefully the best to your own experiences, and you can apply them to yourself, and that's where I think, as we're all of us, you kind of pick and choose the people that that are that that they're going to be able to do something with if you give them this information, and hopefully better success them. And seeing people that you helped, like just guide them in the right direction is no better feeling than like hatching animals is cool, but then seeing someone, like for example, like the gastros, how long have you and I talked about it? And then look, it finally happened. You know what I mean? Like that was a species I remember saving up for and just working. I remember I was working with my buddy, and he was, I was helping him out on the side. Like I had my other job, and I would drive an hour away to Staten Island. He was like, listen, he's like, I could pay you cash, or I could pay in animals. And I just wanted the animals. I was like, okay, if I don't have to spend my money that I make, and I could just work for these animals, I'll do that. So I did that. And this is when gastros were $1,200. They were expensive. They were expensive, but they weren't as expensive as when they first were brought in. But I was like, man, if I could just work for them and not have to spend my money, fuck it, Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And, and I remember like meeting you maybe a couple months. I think like, I don't know if I had bred them yet, or if I had like had eggs, but I remember like when I had used all my monitor knowledge to keeping them, and next thing I knew was getting eggs. And I was like, dude, these things are like, the cool thing about gastros is they're like a snake and a lizard. You kind of get both. They're a tree monitor and also like a tegu. They're so unique in their own, and the fact that these are, to think that they're a lizard that comes from a climate, and they're insanely green, bluish tint to them, and they thrive in an environment that if you look the other way, you'll get snatched up and eaten. Yeah, and they thrive in it, and they live in the canopy of Africa. You know what I mean, running about, and they're such amazing little lizards. And just seeing, like, I remember when I saw a female the first time, her like the prehensile tail was pretty much covering almost like the eggs, and she was covered up with them. I was like, dude, this is a snake. You know what I mean? And seeing, they're just so unique. But like I said, giving that information, and I remember like the first time hatching those lizards, and then I was like, dude, you'll never forget that time. Yep. And I'm sure, like, lo and behold, it took long enough. And I told you, I was like, dude, I guarantee the first clutch or two that you get, it's going to go to shit. Mm-hmm. And it always does for everyone that gets gastro eggs. That first clutch always goes to shit. And sometimes even the second clutch. But when you finally get them going, man, they don't stop. And do you guys have another clutch cooking, or is she pregnant right now?
We're looking at her.
Usually by the time the eggs are hatching, you're getting another clutch.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking recently.
Keep an eye out. That's usually how it went for me, at least. And they're pretty prolific. You can get at least, anywhere to 3 to 4 clutches a season out of them. And they're awesome little lizards, regardless of where the market is for them. Like, just knowing that, like, just seeing them, I will never get tired of seeing those lizards. I mean, I'm sure you guys look at them and you're just like, holy shit, they're just the coolest thing ever. Because as babies, gastros are the most curious thing in the world. Till they get to sexual maturity, that curiosity goes away. Yeah. But till the point of them reaching that point, they'll climb on you. They'll eat off your hands. They're fearless of you. And it's just, it's like a monitor, but then it has the personality of almost like a tegu. Because mine used to let me rub under their chin. They used to climb on my hand. Dude, they used to climb on my shoulder. The minute they started breeding, that went away. Yeah. All that went away. They started biting. They started wanting to bite me. They ran away. They're just, I don't see them for long periods of time, but enjoy them while you enjoy them now. Because like right now is like those moments where you're just like, oh, dude, this is what reptile keeping is all about. Just having learning, having that little animal build a trust with you. Like I love keeping lizards for the fact that they're just so smart, but I love snakes just because that was my first love with reptiles.
You gotta earn that trust with a monitor with the lizard for sure. Once you gain,
MJ, you've only had a Nile, right?
Yeah,
that's a shitty experience. I guarantee you raise a little Salvatore baby, or you get an Aki at a young age and you work with them. Like, dude, it's just such a different experience.
I want a black dragon or a crack monitor.
That's a big bag to take on.
Well,
That's definitely a big bag to take on. Trust me, even though I don't keep that stuff anymore. Like for me to do it now, I want to do it the best way possible. Give like if I can't give these lizards minimum like an 8x10 by like an 8x8x8 or like a 10x10x10, like I don't even want to keep them just because it's not fair to the animals, and also just seeing those animals act how they are supposed to is just a whole other feeling of success of keeping reptiles, in my opinion, when you get to keep the animals how they're supposed to be kept and not just keeping them for your own gratification.
Now, Steven, you've been working hands-on with monitors and lizards quite a bit now since you've been working with Forrest side by side. Do you have any questions for Andrew? Do you have anything that you want to pick his brain about with whatever it is working with these monitors and shit that you're working with?
I would say one thing that we're dealing with that's kind of concerning to me is the idea of a female becoming gravid too young and becoming egg bound just by way of becoming gravid too small a size or too young of an age. Is there any validity to that at all?
I think raising animals together, and if the animals are compatible and willing to breed, they know. It's like one of those things, like they're not going to get egg bound because they're too young. They're going to get egg bound due to improper nesting.
Yeah.
They may not be particularly fertile, but she's still going through the motions because, like, for example, Ackies can breed at 5 months old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or Kimberly
Rock monitors can breed at that age. But that's the thing. Even if they're not adult size, does that essentially mean they're going to get egg bound? No, it just means that they're you're if they're willing to breed and they're willing and they're accepting, they know.
Yeah.
That's it. It's completely on them. And at that point, that's where your husbandry has to be on point.
God, 5 months is nuts.
Ask Andrew more about our cages and
I think I'll be out there in March, so I would definitely like to see where you guys are moving forward. I think, like I said, you guys are finally at the point where you aren't getting any new animals. You're strictly just focusing on what you have and building it and pushing it to the next level, and I think that's important, because just getting new stuff is fun, don't get me wrong, I love it, but at the end of the day, there gets a point where you get kind of overwhelmed, whether if it's you have too many animals or you just have too many projects. Yep. And where you finally get to really settle down and focus on that said project, and it really kind of makes the difference between just being
we accidentally get two new. We got Brazilian Gallowasps.
Those are cool, dude. They're so insane as babies. Yeah. I wish they stayed the color that they did as babies.
Yeah,
those are so cool. I remember seeing those for the first time, and they went through it's weird how stuff like that goes through different market fluctuations. They'll be so expensive, and then they'll be dirt cheap, and you can't even get rid of them. You know what I mean? But those have always been anything from Brazil. I would love to. It's a shame that country is just so polluted, and that's almost everywhere. But just destroy. Just the agriculture there has just been withered away by just tourism, and everything else has been neglected because of it. But places like that, like what you said before, Mexico is the new Australia.
Yep.
And knowing that place could eventually, the stuff that is there could disappear is depressing. I think human beings are the worst thing to ever happen to this planet. Without a doubt. But it's also amazing that we are able to share it with these amazing animals that have been here before we were ever even a thought. It's it's cool. I think it's an honor in a way. But is there any other question, guys? We've been going on for a while. Honestly, the first hour was fucking nonsense. The last bit of this was good.
We appreciate your time, bro. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. We have a couple more wrap up questions. I know Forrest has another question he wants to ask.
Which one? Just in general.
About his sexuality. You tell me. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, dude, where are you out there, Andrew?
I didn't hear you, but what'd you say?
Oh my god,
price lately.
What happened?
You're ridiculous, MJ.
What did you say? I really part of it was fading out. I really didn't hear. What'd you say?
He's ask him about his sexuality.
Oh, be like, I'm a straight male, from New Jersey. What more do you want to know?
Okay, real quick.
How about riding bikes, man? How's that going? Are you,
Dude, riding bikes, that's another big, I mean, like, that's something I'm super passionate about. I don't really talk about it too much, but that's something that is right there. Like, riding bikes and fishing are definitely the one things that I'm passionate about just as much as reptiles. And it sucks because I don't have enough time to do everything. But riding is the one thing, like, if I could only pick one, to be honest with you, even though I'm much better at breeding reptiles than I am biking, just because I've just known animals forever, so it just kind of comes as second nature at this point. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick riding bikes. Just the feeling.
You're only going to do that for a little bit longer, man.
Dude, that's why I do my best to try to eat right and just be as healthy as possible. Because I never want that feeling of riding my bike to go away, even though I know it will. You know,
you're fucking ride a bike, bro. That's another thing I've always.
MJ's like one of the few people I like send videos to. Like I ride, but like I don't like post about it. Like I like posting.
Every time you send me shit, I just get the full fucking New York vibe, the East Coast vibe.
Yeah,
and it dude, I don't know, bro. I fuck with your.
I like the tech stuff that you do, like all the the backwards.
It just reminds me of fucking kids, like straight raw East Coast. I don't know.
Thanks, man. I still and to me, riding like I wish I was more progressive with that. Like it's just like I said, dedicating more time to the animals. It kind of
photography game too, bro. You're.
I have a few things that I'm into. I know I don't talk about it, but I try to kind of correlate everything into one. Like just how I do things. Whether if it's bringing the way I would like to film or capture photos into the animals. And how I represent them, and it's just.
If you guys want, you can follow Andrew's personal page. It's Andrew Acevedo on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't post anything on there, but yeah, every once in a while I'll post a riding clip.
Yeah, he'll post riding clips and shit.
Every once in a blue moon, but that's very rare. Other than that, it's AA exotics for everything else. That's usually
exactly.
Everything else that's the most important stuff. If you ever have honestly any questions or anything, but. For anyone really out there, I mean, most of the information, like there's nothing really I haven't said or information that isn't out there that, you can't really get, I don't think you guys talk highly of me and I find it's funny to me because I'm just a regular person. That's how I feel like I just know a little bit more about snakes than the next person. That's really it. And I just paid a little bit more attention to them, but you ask me other stuff, I don't know shit about it. So
you have a ton of lizard knowledge and monitor knowledge. You're around John all the time from SimHab.
I'm just fortunate, again, to just have people that just have allowed to have that access information. I don't think of it anything else because they're just close friends.
Yep.
Like these are all people that have just been like, I know their kids, I know their wife, you know what I mean? Like I go to their house, like I don't go there to be like, oh, let's geek out. Like I just want to see them, like these are just my friends.
We're so lucky we get access to people.
So all these cool animals in all these different places.
The coolest BMX pro at a show, become his friend. But in this, you could go to the show, meet John. Next thing you know, you're friends with the editor of the most respected scientific journal.
Yeah, for sure.
He has been for a long time. And he's a humble dude that will sit there and talk to you and give you information. Like that's
like Harlan Wall, like with MJ, like that dude is just a book of knowledge. And like, that's like, you would think after all these years, he gets sick of fucking spitting out information, but he's still willing to like talk down and just give actual information. He's, like that's awesome that there's people still like that. And like you said, being in this hobby, you can just meet someone just out of the blue. And it can change. And that's what it was for me. I met certain people that took me from my situation and put me in a better position and has allowed me to advance and to be where I'm at and not just be stuck with everyone else that's in my age group or what other people are focused on, whether if it's that age group or whether if it's a group of animals that you work with, you know what I mean? Because people feel, like I said, most of the people I work with are all much older than me. So like for a long period of time, it wasn't until these past like maybe 2 years I've been taken a little bit more seriously, but for the most part I was looked at as a kid I still feel like most of them do look at me as a kid, but definitely after the animals, the animals speak for themselves. So that alone has just kind of changed people's perspective. And but at the end of the day, you're only as cool as your animals are.
You're only as good as your last clip.
Yeah, exactly. So don't get me wrong, unless you're finding scientific information or discovering new species, you're only as cool as your animals are.
Yeah, right.
You know, and that's unfortunate, but yeah, man. Yeah, is there any other questions, guys?
When's your next West Coast trip? That's my question.
Sooner rather than later, man. Hopefully, maybe spring. It just kind of depends on how things go. Like this year's really crazy as far as like I said, having a clutch hatch, having eggs laid, having another female that's coming out of pre-lay, have another female that's due to lay in 2 weeks, have 2 other females that's due to lay in the end of the month, have other females ovulating. Just so much. Like this year is really going to be probably I'd like to say the biggest year yet, and it's hard to say to what's going on. So as far as trips and stuff, it really depends on when stuff is hatching, and you know, because going away for me, I don't know about it is for you guys. It's hard. Like Forrest, how long
100%.
were you sacrificing not going into places because you didn't have help or you didn't have anyone? You know what I mean? I just recently found like a buddy of mine that I ride with, who's also just like a younger kid that I can see mentoring, like, because he listens to what I say and he takes it to heart, and he actually wants to do, whether if it's riding bikes or just general life advice, like he just listens to what I say and just respects, you know, and he has an interest for animals, and he's someone that I can see working with and like being able to bring and pretty much put under my wing. And he's not someone that I'm expecting to take over this or to be the next big breeder. I just want him to have to just get reptile experience because he just likes animals. You know what I mean? And for him to see
one of the most, that's what I want to do a lot with my facility, is bring people in and have them be able to experience it and work and do internships.
And I know he'll never forget that. Like he'll look back 20 years from now and he'll be like, hey, I remember when I was at Andrew's house and he showed me babies hatching and I got to cut them with him, or he got to show me the first ever this.
Shit that like gets embedded in their brain. Like,
that's what it was for the people. For me, like if it wasn't for them, I would not have pushed to be where I'm at. You know what I mean? Seeing that fueled my fire to just keep going.
They don't forget that shit.
And for sure, you know, I'm forever thankful for it. So
I'll never forget the feeling of just hatching anything that you
incubate at your house, you pull the eggs from your female. It's different when you do breeding loans, because that was like the first stuff like I got into breeding wise was breeding loans, where other people did all the work, and it was cool. I got stuff from it, but until I started breeding stuff myself and having the females do everything here, that's where it like really changed.
For a breeding loan, but I'm doing the fucking work. I ain't fucking doing the work. You know what I mean? I'd rather where if you trust me, I'll do it, but I'm not sending you my shit. Fuck that.
Nah, I'm at the point now where I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable, and I could send stuff. You know, like I got friends like MJ. Like if I get that particular breeding, you know, like I'll send you a mail. You know what I mean? Like that's just because I want to see it happen.
Especially Tim and getting some bar neck locks. Hey, let's talk about.
Dude, Steven, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on what you're going to be doing this season. So don't let me down.
For the breeder award, breeder of the year award 2020.
If you guys produce a litter of emeralds, I just want one. I just want one.
Look, I just want a picture. Send me a picture.
Yeah, man.
Because I'm gonna annoy the shit out of you just because like
I want to scrub. Steven, please. We'll talk later about that, but I definitely want a bar neck scrub, please.
Yeah, you and everyone fucking else. Get out of here.
No,
you know, how many times when you post pictures of your scrubs, they're like, hey, can I get put on the list? Or hey, when you get babies, can you let me know? Or this, that, and the third.
Those are fucking every time. Kickers.
Every single time. One thing I do want to put, a dream species for me to breed are my emeralds and my basins. That is what I'm working for the next 5 to 6 years from now, is to, my retics will hopefully be so established by then I could give 2 shits about what's going on breeding wise with them. I want to just get a litter of arboreal stuff.
We paired 8 pairs, right? 8
females.
Yeah, 8 females.
That
all
new
signal
group
herp.
You got.
All signal herp, everything signal herp. And we've got
one male that you guys have over there. I dread it, and it's one of the single herp line too. That's
everything's signal. So it's like, you know, Rico is a friend and somebody that I looked up to so much. So to have that chance to have that stuff live on, it's heavy.
I think because that stuff, you know, if it wasn't for you getting that one group, I mean, it was for a while. There was only a handful, like, you know, like Miss Willie line stuff, you know, like still only a handful of that stuff. Like if it isn't for like Ryan, you know, and you and who else? There's still a handful of other. I think does Marshall have any?
Nothing pure. He only does crosses.
Crosses, yeah, crosses.
I think Ryan got his last pure signal animal, and there's nobody better to have it. I mean, I wish Ryan had my animals, honestly, but
if anyone's gonna do it, Ryan. I mean, Ed is also someone I really look up to. I mean, Ed is just
Ed,
and also Ed is so humble, but he shits on everyone on everything that they do. It's like one of those things that
I love it.
Marcel Mendez is pretty sick too, bro.
Oh no, without a doubt.
If you say who do you I mean, I respect that guy on a level.
If Marcel and Ed were best friends, that'd be the most craziest duo I've ever fucking seen in my entire life.
Yeah, Marshall and I'm sure they get along well. I mean, Marshall
cool.
Yeah. But really, Ryan and Ed are just my favorite duo. Like,
Ed is hands down like Ed is where I'm aspiring to be. Like, if I could go back in time, I've had this conversation with a few people. If I could go back in time and change what I would keep and invest into as far as time and what I want to do project wise, it would be Arboreals. Even though I would probably be just as heartbroken as I did with.
Oh, you'll lose all your money. Yeah,
I'll lose everything. But the thing is, I just want to wake up one day and just see a pile of little red babies crawling around. That's it. God. That's all I want one day, to just wake up and just see little red babies crawling around the cage. If I could have that, I can die happy. If I could experience that once, I know I'll die happy. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff hatched out here at my place and at different places, but I've never seen that.
I feel that.
So till I see that, I'll and I want it to happen here, and I know everything will. My life, the rest of my life will be okay no matter what happens, because I got to see that.
That's how I feel about the emeralds too. I'm just like, dude, let me have this year.
I'm super passionate about it. I don't talk about them a lot just because I'm just growing animals up. Like, but I'm also, my knowledge is very limited with them. You know what I mean? I would love to go to Guyana and Peru and, all these different places to see these animals in the wild, and just to be able to see, it makes me think, and this is obviously a whole other topic, like getting into like regurg and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but dude, we're already almost 3 hours into this, but
I understand. We're wrapping it up, and me and Forrest have gone back and forth about regurgitation, and
no, it makes me think, like, if the animal
say case closed,
and witch doctors.
All I just will say is, like, if these animals can't eat large meals in captivity, I know, but like, how is it that, like, because I remember I saw an old photo of an emerald just wrapped around a possum.
Oh, and I was like, massive meals.
You're just like,
my Miss Willie male from Ryan, the biggest meal I've ever seen is a baby. And we're like, dude, he's going to die. Like, what'd you do?
No, if a solid emerald will never.
Nope.
Never.
But they have cryptosporidium. Yeah, it's coming up.
Damn.
And what Ryan and Ed say, it's just gospel. There's no arguing it. I'm sorry. It sucks.
It throws up. It's got to go in the freezer.
Yep.
Damn, you guys are brutal.
Dude, you know how many times MJ told me, he's like, dude, like, I'm just trying to say, I'm like, dude, that thing should have been dead.
Oh yeah, dude,
I had to. I had to. I've had
it's not worth it. It's just, dude, it's literally put it in the fucking freezer.
Fuck it. Save yourself the time. Save yourself the fucking.
It's just more. It's. You know what's depressing? God. Trying to think you can save that animal and watch it wither away.
Yeah. Your other ones do it.
God, why am I laughing? I'm over here fucking with.
Dude, I'm not laughing. That shit fucking brings tear to my eyes. You know how many fucking emeralds I fucked up with?
Yep, same here.
Well,
we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up.
Always wrap it up.
If you have a emerald tree out there who's throwing up, put it in the freezer.
Or call a witch doctor.
Fuck your vet. Fuck any kind of remedies. Fuck anything like that. Fuck small meals. Fuck not feeding it for 30 days.
Oil diffusers and
flag oil down its throat.
Oil diffusers.
Right.
No, I mean, make sure your vet reads scientific literature about chronic regurgitation syndrome, and then go from there.
And if your vet's trying to charge you $300 for a cultural test, make sure you fucking,
That sounds personal, MJ.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that sounds like you've experienced that. I was like, bro, I can't relate, because you know why? The minute it happened, I threw it in the fucking freezer.
Oh yeah.
And as shitty as that sounds, like, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? Like, I tried to do it once to where I could think I could fix this. Yeah, okay. That's fucking more depressing than anything else.
I have a fucking emerald that regurged in November, and I did the whole fucking vet thing. I was ready to throw it in the freezer. Don't get me wrong. But I did the vet thing. They tested for something that was some bullshit test, according to Joe SWITALSKI. He said that test doesn't tell you shit, but passed for no parasites. I've gave it its second meal since then. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it looks fucking weird right now. I looked.
It might take it for a while too.
I checked on the emerald, and it's fucking
a year later.
Its body looks like it's about to regurg, and if it does, it's fuck, dude. Jesus Christ, this shit sucks.
It sucks. I haven't gotten a single new emerald because I have no desire to.
Don't.
I have no desire. My animals are solid, and I'm just gonna keep my group. And if I get more, I'm gonna keep them in another room, maybe downstairs.
Yeah, I tried that. Remember when I had like 30 of them?
But the problem is you kept getting more.
What?
The thing is, like, you kept getting more, and it would be like this group and then this group. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna get like 4 or 5 babies, all from the same litter, and just raise them together. That's it.
I just had to see the horror for myself, you know?
Yeah, right? It's something sick. It's like being like fucking obsessed with like cutting yourself or something. You want to feel the pain. You're like, I just want to feel it for myself because you know what? I don't think it's true. And then you have it happen and you're like, this is the fucking worst experience I've ever done in my life.
Yep. And you hear about there's been several guys that have built multiple collections of Northerns.
I don't even
over 100 animals, and they've done it like with huge money and multiple times and lost everything. And it's like,
I heard about that.
Dude, yeah.
Oh man.
Without a doubt. Is there anything else, MJ, though? Is any questions or are we pretty much good?
We're good. Wrap it up, man. We fucking appreciate your time, bro. You're fucking, you're the fucking man.
Yep.
Dude, thanks for having me. Like I said, I kind of wish I had planned a little better for this, but I think it was more fun to.
Bro, the whole idea behind our podcast is fucking open platform. There's no fucking structure to it. There's no agenda other than Forrest and Kush showing up on time, which they did. And
dude, the stream was sick too. I mean, it was it was great because I'm sure everyone watching, like,
this is the first stream we have with no fucking lag. So this shit.
It's the first one of the new decade, even though time doesn't
actually motivate Forrest to want to keep YouTube because motherfuckers been wanting to put it down for I don't know how now. And Stephen Kush doesn't ever speak up. All he does is fucking do.
I think there needs to be a Steven episode.
No, there's definitely going to be a Kush.
Steven, you have to go to your house though. You can't be here. Like, go home so you can be like, I'm just in a different setting.
We need
the reptile room.
Yeah. Just go into the log cabins, and then Forrest, you can do it from the other. You can just do it from another room.
No, but listen up, guys. Anybody who's looking to fucking get into the Super Dwarf game, looking to inquire, please
contact Garrett Hartle.
My boy. No, Garrett's one thing, but listen, the unsung hero of this shit is my boy Andrew Acevedo. Look him up. Fucking AA Exotics. Okay, he's on Instagram. He's on Facebook. Andrew Acevedo on Facebook. Hey, what's up with the Red Tick? Before we end this, what's up with the Red Tick page? The Red Tick Eugene. Is that
Red Tick Eugenics? That is not my group. That is Rodney's group. I just help run that. So
does it still happen?
Yeah, Red Tick Eugenics is people posting it. Red Tick Eugenics. If you want to find the factual information, that's probably the one group out there that has it. I don't really put a whole lot of information, but Rodney has put a lot of data and a lot of information, and we're pretty specific about it. So don't mess up the group. Follow the rules. Follow the rules so we don't get kicked off and then all the information's gone.
So what do you got for us?
Just seriously, guys, it's not a joke. CARPETFEST down at the Bartolini's. It's going to be the event. 100%.
Donate. Fucking donate.
Vessel. You guys got to go to this event.
Whatever you fucking money, you got a corn snake. You got a milk
knowledge,
snake.
not Nido.
Yes, right knowledge, not Nido.
Be like, fucking donate. That's it.
You have a fucking t-shirt. Do you have anything? You have a tampon. Whatever you can donate. Donate it because it's gonna go to nidovirus. God damn it! No, for real.
Hey, no joke though. Ian literally raised more money at that event. I mean, Ian, what he did last year was one of the most impressive grassroots fundraising attempts anybody in reptiles has ever done. So for him to do that for something that's plaguing pythons and killing collections, this stuff's super serious.
It's real, yeah. It's super real, man. So
test your pythons for Nido, Fish Head Labs.
And the information is in the fucking description below. Shout out to Ian Bessel for doing that. Southeast CARPETFEST. Fucking hit him up. Any questions? But this is fucking MJ. I'm fucking out. Forrest is out. Zoo Dreams.
Peace,
What up?
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me. Even I can't wait to see you guys.
Acevedo, AA, fucking exotic, super dwarf, fucking young OG, triple OG. We out late.
Thank you guys. Bye.